Chapter 134. The Country of Yunyang. The Western Ridge of the Chu King. The Chu Royal City. In the blink of an eye, I've been back for a month. This Buddhist essence has finally been put to good use. In the largest master bedroom of the second courtyard of Chuxiu Inn, a youth dressed in robes whiter than snow sat cross-legged on the bed, his eyes wide open as he murmured to himself. His body emitted waves of hazy golden light. Not only did it fill the entire room, it even extended out of the room and enveloped the entire courtyard of guest house number 2 and the courtyard of guest house number 3. From afar, the 10 master bedrooms of these two courtyards, as well as the backyard of the third courtyard, were completely bathed in the golden light. Little Gold, how is your level of practice now? I'm almost at the final bottleneck of great consummation of the Qi gathering, and just one more step and I'll be close to attaining the Khanate stage and becoming a Khanate demon. A huge black hawk with a flame-like golden crown on its head spoke excitedly to another black hawk that was only slightly smaller than it in the backyard of the courtyard of the third guest house. Its eyes flickered with indescribable excitement as it spoke excitedly to another black hawk that was only slightly smaller than it. Big Gold, in this environment, give me another half a month and I'll be able to catch up to you now. The black eagle behind said disdainfully. Give me another half a month and I might even be at the final bottleneck of great consummation of the Qi gathering. You will eventually be surpassed by me. The black eagle in front raised its head proudly, its eyes filled with pride. As it spoke, it seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and a look of shock appeared in its eyes. But, come to think of it, I can't believe that not only did young master manage to take away the Buddhist essence that even the late Khanate stage red goshawk could not, he even managed to swallow it into his stomach. Not only does the young master understand the Buddhist Sarira, but he also knows how to control the Buddhist Sarira. Based on the current situation, after he swallows the Buddhist Sarira, he will be able to perfectly control the power within it and help us cultivate. The eyes of the other black hawk also revealed a look of reverence that came from the bottom of its heart. Young master is definitely not an ordinary person. It's our luck to be able to follow him. In the past, we were still thinking of leaving him after stepping into the Khanate realm and becoming a Khanate great demon. But now, I don't want to leave him at all. I always feel that by his side we can see a wider world. Me too. These two black eagles were the two golden-crowned eagles that Zhou Donghuang had obtained from the depths of the Lost Forest. When the two golden-crowned eagles had first left the Lost Forest, they were only petty consummation demons of the Qi gathering, and they were still a long way from achieving great consummation. And now, after following Zhou Donghuang for some time, not only had they all attained great consummation of the Qi gathering, but they were even close to attaining the Khanate stage. In the short span of a month. With the help of the Buddhist essence that had been integrated into Zhou Donghuang's body, it was not just the two golden-crowned eagles who were improving rapidly in their training. Even the others were improving at a ridiculously fast pace. The one who had improved the most was that little girl, Yunlu. Yunlu's martial talent was already the highest among the group of people around Zhou Donghuang, and coupled with the fact that she had practiced the top technique in the universe, the Thousand-Star Sword technique, in the short span of a month, she had successfully attained level 6 of the Qi gathering under the protection of the Buddhist light that Zhou Donghuang had extended from the Buddhist essence. After all, a month ago Yunlu had only been at level 3 of the Qi gathering. In the short span of a month she had advanced 3 levels of practice. Xiao Lu's improvement is really great, but it was also because I did my best to use the power of the Buddhist essence to assist them in their training. If they had been on the cliff at the peak of that mountain, bathing in the power of the Buddhist essence, they would not have improved so much. A month ago, after obtaining the Buddhist essence, Zhou Donghuang had used his own qi to set up a few simple formations to suppress the power that the Buddhist essence was emitting. After that, he gained complete control over the Buddhist Sarira. He could control the power within it as he pleased and swallowed it, making it a part of his body. Now, with a single thought, he could completely stop the power of the Buddhist essence from being released. With a single thought, he could also completely control the power of the Buddhist essence and where it extended to. Just like now, he was controlling the power of the Buddhist essence to assist the two golden-crowned eagles and the group of people by his side in their training. Of course, the consumption of the power of the Buddhist essence by him was far greater than the power of the Buddhist essence being used on its own. If this continues, even if this Buddhist essence is comparable to a Buddhist essence left behind by a late primal core Buddhist adept, in at most 1 or 2 years, the power in it will be completely used up, and it will turn to dust. Zhou Donghuang was very clear on this point. But even so, I can at least use its power to attain the early primal core stage. At this thought, Zhou Donghuang's eyes shone with confidence. It must be known that the Buddhist essence in his body was left behind by an early Dharma adept, and even if there was not much power left in it, it was still comparable to a Buddhist essence left behind by a late primal core Buddhist adept. That red goshawk among the eagle beasts was just an ordinary existence. It was not talented and it did not have any good techniques. It had relied entirely on its instincts to train, and with the help of the Buddhist essence, it had attained the late Khanate stage. With Zhou Donghuang's incredible talent, and with the help of medicine he could make the most of the Buddhist essence. Now, not only can I control the power of the Buddhist essence to help people practice, I can also use its power to attack. Although, I have not yet attained the Khanate stage and cannot fully use its power to the extent of a primal core adept. But, before Zhou Donghuang could finish his thought, his ears twitched, and he seemed to have sensed something and his eyes narrowed. At the same time he stopped the power of the Buddhist essence from extending outwards. After a few breaths, the golden light that enveloped the two guest courtyards gradually faded, and then completely disappeared as if it had never appeared. What's going on? Young master stopped the power of the Buddhist essence? Whether it was the two golden-crowned eagles, Fu, Freezing Wind, Lu Qinghu, or Lin Lan Yunlu or Yang Zishi, they all realized. Their cultivation speed had been beaten back to its original state. Of course, they knew in their hearts. This was the result of Zhou Donghuang stopping the power of the Buddhist essence from extending outwards. Just as the two golden-crowned eagles and everyone else stopped training, Zhou Donghuang had already pushed open the door and walked out of the room. He stood in the spacious courtyard, his eyes fixed on the sky. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as Zhou Donghuang stood in the courtyard, his eyes fixed on the sky, a huge figure appeared in the sky. It was a huge white crane, and it swooped down and appeared above Zhou Donghuang's head, circling at a low altitude. Whoosh! Whoosh! Before the white crane landed, the two golden-crowned eagles had already flown out from the courtyard of the third guest house. They circled in the air nearby and stared at the white crane warily as they said to Zhou Donghuang, "Don't worry. Young master, this crane is a Khanate demon. Young master, the power of this Khanate demon is probably not as strong as that red goshawk." Big Gold and Little Gold reminded Zhou Donghuang. At this time Zhou Donghuang could clearly see the white crane descending from the sky. It had a wingspan of more than 10 meters, and it had a silver crown on its head. Its eyes were not as gentle as those of ordinary white cranes, but they were fierce. Silver-crowned crane? Zhou Donghuang raised his eyebrows. With his experience and knowledge from his previous life, it was not difficult for him to recognize that this white crane was a silver-crowned crane with a rather good bloodline among the flying demons. Among the cranes, it was second only to the golden-crowned crane and a few other types of cranes. However, after glancing at the silver-crowned crane, Zhou Donghuang's gaze fell on the two figures on the back of the silver-crowned crane. They were two middle-aged men. One of them wore a dragon robe with 9 five-clawed golden dragons embroidered on it. His face was firm and dignified with thick eyebrows and large eyes. His pair of vertical sword-like eyebrows were like the finishing touch of a painting, causing his entire person to appear a little colder. The Emperor of Yunyang country? Seeing the man's attire, it was not difficult for Zhou Donghuang to guess his identity. He was most likely the Emperor of Yunyang country. However, his gaze only lingered on him for a moment before Zhou Donghuang looked at the other middle-aged man standing in front of him. To be able to make the Emperor of Yunyang country stand so obediently behind him, this man's status was obvious. This middle-aged man was dressed in an elegant gray robe. His eyebrows were sharp and his face was as clear as jade. He stood on the back of the silver-crowned crane with his hands behind his back, looking down at Zhou Donghuang indifferently. "You are Zhou Donghuang?" The middle-aged man looked at Zhou Donghuang calmly and asked calmly. However, Zhou Donghuang's response was to turn the small metal ball in his hand into a small metal sword that was surrounded by a cold light. It whistled through the air towards the silver-crowned crane. Swish! The speed of the small metal sword was so fast that the early Khanate stage silver-crowned crane could not dodge in time, and its eyes were filled with despair. It really is a sword sphere. Seeing that the small metal sword had reached the silver-crowned crane in the blink of an eye and was about to kill it, the middle-aged man's voice was slightly agitated as he pointed with his finger. Suddenly, a stream of condensed green Jin Qi turned into a green finger light that was as thick as a finger. It easily knocked the small iron sword away. The green finger was about 10 feet long, and after knocking the small metal sword away, it quickly returned to the middle-aged man's fingertip. Late Khanate stage? Zhou Donghuang raised his hand to catch the small metal ball that had returned to his hand. He looked at the middle-aged man and his gaze froze. Head of the Valley of Medicine Masters. Chapter 135. 10 feet of chi was a sign of the late Khanate stage. On the back of the Khanate stage silver-crowned crane, the middle-aged man stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He casually pointed out with a finger, and a ray of chi shot out from his finger. It immediately revealed one thing. He was an adept who had entered the late Khanate stage. And in the country of Yunyang, there could only be one late Khanate stage adept, the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters. Furthermore, this late Khanate stage adept had come with the Emperor of Yunyang, and the latter had clustered around him respectfully. This also showed how extraordinary this person was. A late Khanate stage adept, accompanied by the Emperor of Yunyang. If it was not the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, who else could it be? That's right, I am the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters. Suemo stood on the back of the silver-crowned crane, looking down at the youth indifferently. 18 years old, great consummation of the Qi gathering, in the history of the Valley of Medicine Masters, and even in the history of the 16 countries of the East Valley, there has never been a martial prodigy like you. Although there was the help of the Primal Core Adept, it is still a rare achievement. Suemo said calmly. Come down. Zhou Donghuang looked at Suemo calmly and said, I don't like people standing on top of me. I'll give you the time of 5 breaths. After 5 breaths, if you don't come down, I'll make you come down. As soon as Zhou Donghuang said this, Suemo was taken aback. The Emperor of Yunyang, Jiang Tianxin, who was standing behind Suemo, had long heard that the youth in front of him was very arrogant, but he had never imagined that he would dare to be so arrogant in front of Suemo, the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters and a late Khanate stage adept. Kid, how dare you be so presumptuous in front of the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters? Are you tired of living? Jiang Tianxin asked in a low voice, staring coldly at the youth. In the depths of his eyes, there was a bloodthirsty hatred. This was the youth who had killed his father, Jiang Yunding, and he wanted nothing more than to kill him as soon as possible. The head of the Valley of Medicine Masters? Fu, Freezing Wind, Lu Qinghu, and the others had just stepped out of the room when they heard Jiang Tianxin's words. Their expressions changed drastically. The Valley of the Medicine Masters was a powerful sect that stood above the 16 countries of the East Valley, including the country of Yunyang. Every year, the 16 countries of the East Valley had to offer large amounts of gold, silver, and treasures to the Valley of the Medicine Masters in exchange for their protection. In the Valley of the Medicine Masters, there were as many Khanate adepts as there were clouds. Among them, the head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was said to be a powerful late Khanate adept. He is the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, Suemo? Isn't it said that the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters is already over 70 years old? Why do you look so young? Although I've long heard that the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters has a way of retaining his youthful looks, isn't this too exaggerated? Fu, Freezing Wind, Lu Qinghu and the others might have only known of the existence of the Valley of the Medicine Masters in the past, but after staying in the Chu Royal City for so long, they had learned a lot about the valley from others. And this was something they wanted to understand. Because now, their young master could be said to have no rival in the country of Yunyang, and only the Valley of the Medicine Masters could threaten their young master. After understanding the situation, they were naturally frightened, and they had prayed in their hearts that the Valley of the Medicine Masters would not interfere in the feud between their young master and the Imperial Court of Yunyang, because they did not think that their young master could compete with the Valley of the Medicine Masters now. But what they did not expect was, not only did the Valley of the Medicine Masters intend to interfere in the feud between their young master and the Imperial Court of Yunyang, but the head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, the late Khanate adept, had personally arrived on the Valley of the Medicine Masters' Khanate demon silver-crowned crane. Now, seeing the middle-aged man in the dragon robe behind the head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Suemo, it was not difficult to guess his identity. Looks like the Imperial Court of Yunyang does not learn their lesson, Zhou Donghuang said as he glanced at Jiang Tianxin. Zhou Donghuang glanced at Jiang Tianxin and said, Originally, I did not intend to settle the score with the Imperial Court of Yunyang, but today, since you, the Emperor of Yunyang, have come personally from now on, the Imperial Court of Yunyang shall have a change of leadership. Hearing Zhou Donghuang's words, Jiang Tianxin was stunned at first, and then he could not help but laugh sarcastically. Zhou Donghuang, have you lost your mind? Change the leadership of the Imperial Court of Yunyang? I think, you should first ask the head of the valley if he allows you to change the leadership of the Imperial Court of Yunyang. As Jiang Tianxin spoke, the sarcastic smile on his face deepened. Ignorant junior. Now, Suemo had also regained his composure, and when he looked at the young man again, his gaze was cold. I can't even remember how many years it has been since someone dared to anger me. Junior, I have to say, your courage is commendable. Do you really think that after obtaining the opportunity of the Primal Core Adept, and even obtaining the sword sphere left behind by the Primal Core Adept, you are invincible? As he said this, Sumo's lips curled up in a mocking smile. You do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you know, if I had not wanted you to hand over the Primal Core Adept's opportunity and even teach me how to use the sword sphere, I would not have been able to do so. Now you would be dead. As he said this, Sumo's eyes were filled with murderous intent. The time of 5 breaths is up. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd facing Sumo's lecture, the young man did not seem to hear. As Sumo finished speaking, the young man grinned, revealing 2 rows of snow-white teeth. His smile was very bright. Whoosh. Without any warning, the young man's white robes fluttered even though there was no wind, and in the palm of his right hand that held the sword sphere, a golden light flashed. In the next moment, swoosh! The short-lived whistling sound of the sword appeared again, but the sword sphere had once again transformed into a small iron sword and flew out like a ghost. Even though Sumo had been alerted by Zhou Donghuang's voice, he realized that he was still half a beat too late. Swoosh! The ray of chi shot out once again, but this time it missed. Swoosh! There was a soft sound as a ray of sword light pierced through the silver-crowned crane's head, killing it in one blow. The Khanate stage demon's glowing eyes dimmed, and its wings stopped moving. Its body that had been circling in the air fell to the ground and landed heavily on the stone table in the courtyard. Bang! The emperor of Yunyang country, Jiang Tianqin, fell to the ground in a sorry state. When he stood up, his legs wobbled and it was obvious that he had injured them. This was because he was a great consummation adept of the Qi gathering, and in the instant that he landed, he had used all the Qi in his body to protect his legs. Even so, the downward force was still too strong and his legs were injured. Boom! Kaboom! On the other side, the Valley Lord of the Valley of Medicine Masters, Sumo, floated down like a feather. As he landed, the green Qi under his feet roared out and hit the ground heavily, causing the bricks and stones to shatter and fly everywhere. The force of the impact caused Sumo to land steadily. The late Khanate stage adept landed 10 meters in the air, completely unharmed. Old friend. As Sumo landed, his gaze fell on the silver-crowned crane that had fallen to the ground, and his eyes flashed with sorrow. This silver-crowned crane had been with him for many years. And now it had died in front of his eyes. In the blink of an eye, Sumo retracted his gaze, and when he looked at the youth again, his eyes were as cold as a knife. It seems I have underestimated you. I did not expect that, although you have not attained the Khanate stage, you can use the sword sphere to execute such a swift attack. Your speed is no slower than my own. That must also be a miraculous encounter left behind by that primal core adept. As he said this, Sumo's eyes flashed with greed, and he stared at Zhou Donghuang as if he had seen a rare treasure. Although the speed of Zhou Donghuang's attack just now was no slower than his own, and he had taken the initiative to kill the Khanate stage silver-crowned crane of the Valley of Medicine Masters. However, he did not think that Zhou Donghuang was a match for him. An adept who had not even attained the Khanate stage, even if he had the sword sphere left behind by the Primal Core Adept and some other secrets, was definitely no match for him. If the other party had the ability to kill him, why did he not attack him just now but the silver-crowned crane instead? This was what Sumo was thinking. So what if I am? Zhou Donghuang did not deny it and asked calmly. Young one, when I capture you, I want to see if you can still be as stubborn as you are now. Sumo's face darkened and his gaze grew colder. At the same time, the gray robe on his body swelled up, and waves of green qi spread out from his body, some long and some short, and the longest was a full 10 feet long. Late Khanate stage adept. Just now, Fu and the others had only heard of Sumo, the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, and so they knew that he was a late Khanate stage adept. But now they had seen Sumo display the power of a late Khanate stage adept with their own eyes. Young master. Suddenly, their hearts were in their throats, and they looked worriedly at the youth in white standing not far away, although they had confidence in their young master. But his opponent was the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, a late Khanate stage adept, and the strongest in the 16 countries of the East Valley. In front of such a person, could an 18-year-old youth really stand up to him? The emperor of Yunyang country, Jiang Tianqin, stared coldly at the youth and said in a low voice, Young one, I advise you to kneel down and beg for mercy, and perhaps the head will spare you some physical pain. However, Zhou Donghuang did not pay any attention to him. He stared coldly at Suemo, who was emanating chi from his body, and said calmly, "I won't bully you. I'll give you a chance to strike. After 3 breaths, if you don't strike, I won't wait for you anymore." Zhou Donghuang's words did not seem to take Suemo seriously at all. "Young one, you are too arrogant." Just as Zhou Donghuang finished speaking, Suemo could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. The chi emanating from his body expanded, and his entire body seemed to transform into a green flame, rushing towards Zhou Donghuang. Whoosh! The green flame raged as if it had transformed into a giant flaming beast with its mouth wide open, wanting to swallow Zhou Donghuang in one bite. Chapter 136. Late Khanate Stage? Faced with Suemo, the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, who was rushing towards him like a raging inferno, Zhou Donghuang could not help but smile faintly. Now Zhou Donghuang's face was calm and unruffled, as if the situation before him was completely under his control. "Young master." As Suemo neared Zhou Donghuang, the expressions on Fu and the others' faces changed. Even the 2 golden-crowned eagles circling at a low altitude had a look of deep worry in their eyes. The Yunyang Emperor, Jiang Tianxian, looked at Zhou Donghuang with a mocking smile. In his opinion, no matter how strong Zhou Donghuang was, he could not possibly be a match for Suemo. Suemo was a late Khanate stage adept, and the only late Khanate stage adept in the 16 countries of the East Valley. Faced with Suemo, who had already crossed half the distance between them, Zhou Donghuang's eyes narrowed slightly and he said calmly, "If you want to get close to me, you'll have to take a blow from me first." As soon as he said this, Zhou Donghuang's right hand rose like lightning, and a golden light spread out from his palm, expanding to more than 3 feet. Whoosh! As Zhou Donghuang lifted his right hand and brought it down, a golden light expanded to more than 30 feet, transforming into a huge golden palm that slammed down on Sumo's head. It was menacing and domineering. Boom! Boom boom boom. The huge golden palm split the air, and there was a loud explosion in the air, as if it had transformed into a small mountain, whistling down from the sky, crashing towards Sumo's head. Ultimate Khanate Stage? As he saw Zhou Donghuang's palm fall, the golden light expanded to 3 feet, transforming into a palm that whistled towards him. Suemo hurriedly stopped in his tracks, his expression changing instantly, and he could not help but let out a cry of shock. Extending one's chi to 3 feet was the hallmark of the ultimate Khanate stage. An ultimate Khanate stage adept was not someone a late Khanate stage adept like him could handle. However, faced with the attack before him, although Suemo did not have the slightest desire to fight, he could only brace himself and defend against the young man's fierce attack. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Rays of green light shot out from Sumo's 10 fingers and met the giant palm print that was whistling down. Every ray of light was a zhang long. Normally, such a technique would be enough to shock many people. However, right now the 10-feet-long finger flashes shot out from Sumo's 10 fingers seemed to pale in comparison to the 30-feet-wide palm print. The limelight had been completely stolen. Boom. Rumble. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the giant golden palm print that was like a small mountain whizzed down and instantly crushed the 10 solid finger glows. How is this possible? Although Suemo knew that it would be difficult for him to block the huge palm print that was coming towards him, he had never imagined that the first-grade martial arts technique of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Dark Dominion Finger, would be so vulnerable in front of the palm print. What he did not know was that he was not the only one who had used a first-grade martial arts technique. Zhou Donghuang had also used a first-grade martial arts technique. The first-grade martial arts technique that Zhou Donghuang was using now was called Heaven Shrouding Palm. Although it was also a first-grade martial arts technique like Sumo's Dark Dominion Finger, the latter was only a weaker first-grade martial arts technique, while the former was the best of the best. Now, Zhou Donghuang was using the power of the Buddha essence in his body to attack, and in the blink of an eye he displayed the power of an ultimate Khanate stage adept. Boom. After the giant palm print had crushed Sumo's attack, it continued to fall towards Suemo. "Have mercy." Suemo cried out in panic, wanting Zhou Donghuang to have mercy. At the same time, the chi in his body was rapidly compressed on the surface of his body, forming a layer of green jade wall. And this was the defensive technique Green Jade Wall, which was also a first-grade martial arts technique of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Bang! The palm print continued to fall, landing on Sumo's body. The green jade wall on the surface of Sumo's body instantly shattered, and his entire body was slammed to the ground, then forcefully slammed into the solid ground. Suemo, who seemed to be embedded in the ground, no longer looked as elegant as before. He looked battered and exhausted, and he opened his mouth to spit out a large mouthful of blood. His aura was weak and the chi in his body was sparse. He no longer looked as imposing as before. And this was because the golden palm print had dissipated in time. Otherwise, with that palm, Suemo would have died without a doubt. Thank you for your mercy. Suemo took a deep breath, raising his head with great difficulty to look at the youth standing not far away, his eyes filled with fear. He knew in his heart that if the youth had not stopped in time, he would have been a dead man now with no chance of survival. I'll give you two choices. Zhou Donghuang glanced at Suemo: either die or become my dog. As he said this, a cold murderous glint flashed across Zhou Donghuang's eyes, as if he was about to devour someone. Whoosh! Zhou Donghuang's words caused Sumo's expression to change completely. He was a late Khanate stage adept, the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, the most powerful man in the 16 countries of the East Valley. This youth actually wanted him to be his master and become his dog? Sir, although I, Suemo, am not as strong as you, that does not mean that I will allow you to humiliate me like this. Sumo's expression was dark as he said, I would rather be killed than humiliated. Is that so? Zhou Donghuang took 2 steps forward, looking down at Suemo, who was lying on the ground unable to move. He grinned. Since you have so much backbone, then I'll give you a quick death. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Donghuang raised his hand again, and the golden light expanded once more, turning into a huge palm print the size of a small mountain. Zhou Donghuang's expression was cold and he snorted coldly, his hand moving violently. Everyone present, including the Yunyang Emperor Jiang Tianxin, did not doubt that once this palm landed, Suemo would definitely die. Master, spare me. At the brink of death, Suemo, whose heart was filled with fear, hurriedly begged for mercy, and even changed the way he addressed Zhou Donghuang as master. Before this, he had indeed felt that his dignity was very important, and he had even thought that it was above his life. However, as death approached, that suffocating feeling of oppression, as well as the hurried memories of the past few decades of training, made him feel that his life was still more important. If he died, there would be nothing left and everything would be for naught. Furthermore, the youth in front of him was only 18 years old, and already had the power of an ultimate Khanate stage adept. In the future, when he grew up, he would definitely become an earth-shattering figure on the planet of Ziyun. Acknowledging such a person as his master would not be a disgrace to him. As Suemo addressed Zhou Donghuang as master, the large courtyard of the second guest room fell into a deathly silence. Suemo, a late Khanate stage adept, the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, and a man in his 70s, now acknowledging a youth as his master? Young master. In a moment, Fu, Freezing Wind, Lu Qinghu, and the rest were the first to regain their senses, and when they looked at the youth again, their eyes were filled with passion. In the past, although they knew that their young master was extraordinary, they did not expect that their young master at the age of 18 would be able to suppress the late Khanate stage head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, and even force him to acknowledge him as his master. Big brother, what young master used just now was the power of that Buddhist essence, right? He can actually use the power of the Buddhist essence to fight against an enemy? Furthermore, he has displayed power comparable to that of an ultimate Khanate stage adept. Little Gold, who was circling in the air, looked at Big Gold with a shocked expression, and asked with some difficulty. It should be. That power is very similar to the power that we normally use to train. I really did not expect that young master could use that Buddhist essence to display such power. Big Gold's eyes were also filled with shock. He had never imagined that his young master would have such a trick up his sleeve. Thump. When Zhou Donghuang's gaze fell on the emperor of Yunyang country, Jiang Tianxin, whose expression had already been very ugly, suddenly had a look of fear in his eyes, and he immediately fell to his knees, begging for mercy. Young Master Donghuang, spare me. Jiang Tianxin's voice was now trembling with fear. Although Jiang Tianxin had been very strong earlier. But that was because he felt that the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, Suemo, was enough to suppress the youth before him. Who would have thought that not only had Suemo not been able to suppress the youth before him, but he had also been seriously injured by the youth, and had even willingly acknowledged the youth as his master, willingly becoming the youth's dog. In his eyes, Suemo was high and mighty, an existence that could not be surpassed. Not to mention that the youth's power was above Suemo's, but now, even Suemo had willingly become the youth's dog, one word from Suemo, and he would die. Not to mention the youth who was now Suemo's master. Whoosh. What responded to Jiang Tianxin was the small metal sword that flew out of Zhou Donghuang's hand. With just one strike, Jiang Tianxin's life was ended. Jiang Tianxin, the emperor of Yunyang country, the chief of the Jiang family of Yunyang country, had fallen at the western ridge of the Chu king. Jiang Tianxin's eyes were filled with despair. In the instant that he died at the hands of Zhou Donghuang, there was only one thought in his mind. If he could turn back time, he would not have dared to provoke this youth, even if he was given 1,000 times more courage. After some time, I will go to the Valley of Medicine Masters. Zhou Donghuang's gaze swept calmly over Su Mo, who was lying in the pit on the floor, and casually threw a small medicine bottle to Su Mo. He said lightly, "This is my wound-healing elixir." Withdrawing his gaze from Su Mo, Zhou Donghuang strode towards his room, at the same time looking at the two golden-crowned eagles, Fu and the rest. "Go back and practice. When I attain the Khanate stage, I will bring you all to the Valley of Medicine Masters." With that, Zhou Donghuang returned to his room. Attain the Khanate stage? Hearing the youth's words, Su Mo was stunned. He is not yet a Khanate stage adept. Chapter 137. That's right. His chi was not the normal green color. It looks like for some reason he was able to use the power of an ultimate Khanate stage adept to defeat me. Very quickly, Su Mo realized, the youth was not really an ultimate Khanate stage adept, but for some reason he was able to use the power of an ultimate Khanate stage adept. His actual level of practice was only great consummation of the chi gathering. Even so, when he thought of that moment of hopelessness when he was on the brink of death, he did not dare to have any thoughts of going against the youth again. No matter what the youth's reason was for being able to use that power, he did not dare to take the risk of provoking the youth again. The youth's decisiveness in casually killing the emperor of Yunyang country, Jiang Tianxin, made Su Mo realize that the youth was not a merciful person. The reason the youth had spared his life was most likely because he felt that he had other uses for him. It looks like what he obtained was not an ordinary primal core adept's fortuitous encounter. Su Mo thought to himself. However, even as he thought this, Su Mo did not dare to have any thoughts of obtaining the youth's primal core adept's fortuitous encounter, because he knew that if he attacked the youth again, the youth would not spare his life. If he were the youth and someone repeatedly offended him, he would not spare the life of the youth. Su Mo was truly afraid. He had been practicing for more than 60 years, and if he were to die here today, everything would be for naught. Did he make his own wound-healing elixir? Looking at the small medicine bottle in his hand, Su Mo's eyes were filled with disdain. Even if it was a wound-healing elixir left behind by a primal core adept, he did not think it would be better than his own, let alone one that the youth had made himself. I want to see how good a wound-healing elixir he can make. Even if the effects are poor, it doesn't matter, I have my own wound-healing elixir with me. As he thought this, Su Mo uncorked the small medicine bottle in his hand and poured the wound-healing elixir into his mouth and swallowed it. However, a moment later, the disdain in the depths of his eyes disappeared and was replaced by waves of disbelief. The effects of this wound-healing elixir are so strong? The effects of the wound-healing powder can be this strong? I've always thought that the wound-healing powder that I concocted was already the peak of the wound-healing powder's efficacy. I didn't expect that there would be such a powerful wound-healing powder in this world. Now Su Mo was truly shocked. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that there would be such an effective wound-healing powder in this world. The efficacy of this medicine was twice as strong as the wound-healing powder that he had formulated, which he believed to be the best in the world. Based on my previous knowledge, this level of efficacy only exists in the healing elixirs produced by alchemists of the primal core stage and above using the Samadhi True Fire. I did not expect that the wound-healing elixir could achieve this level of efficacy. In front of the effects of the wound-healing elixir that he had just consumed, Su Mo felt that the wound-healing elixirs that he carried around with him were no different from trash. It had to be said that the wound-healing elixir that Zhou Donghuang had given Su Mo was indeed very potent. In just a quarter of an hour, Su Mo struggled to sit up. 2 hours later he could move freely. Master, Su Mo awaits your arrival at the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Before leaving, Su Mo stood respectfully in front of the largest master's room in the courtyard and spoke respectfully to the person inside. Su Mo only turned to leave when he heard a faint reply from inside. At the same time, a bitter smile appeared on his face. Although he regretted following the emperor of Yunyang country, Jiang Tianxin, to provoke such a troublemaker and be forced to acknowledge him as his master. But once he thought of Jiang Tianxin's fate, he felt relieved. At least he was still alive. Whoosh, whoosh, Whoosh. When Suemo left, he did not go through the main door. In a flash, his chi flowed through his body, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared behind the walls. After the courtyard had completely regained its peace for a long time, the servant girls who had been standing guard outside the courtyard finally dared to push open the door and enter. When they saw the body of the emperor of Yunyang country, Jiang Tianxin, they were already used to it because in the past few months, 2 people had died in and around this courtyard. But when Jiang Tianxin's body was carried out of the courtyard, and the innkeeper of Chuxiu invited the commander of the Chu Royal City Guard, Shuimeng, over, his expression changed completely when he saw Jiang Tianxin's body. His pupils constricted rapidly. "Don't let anyone touch him. I'll get His Royal Highness here." Shuimeng left the bewildered innkeeper and rushed out of Chuxiu Inn. As he rushed towards the Chu royal household, his heart was still beating rapidly. My God! That youth had actually killed the emperor of Yunyang country? Although Shuimeng had only seen the emperor of Yunyang country once with the Chu king, that one time was enough for him to remember what he looked like. The man in the dragon robe who had died in the courtyard was the emperor of Yunyang country that he had seen before, Jiang Tianxin. Your Majesty. When the Chu king Xiang Xiong followed Shuimeng to Chuxiu Inn and saw Jiang Tianxin's body, he could not help but cry out in shock. Your Majesty? Instantly the innkeeper of Chuxiu Inn was dumbfounded. Although he had already seen that the man lying on the ground was wearing a dragon robe embroidered with a 5-clawed golden dragon, and he knew that this was the exclusive uniform of the emperor of Yunyang country. However, he did not dare to link it to the emperor of the country of Yunyang. That emperor was high and mighty, how could he have died in Chuxiu Inn for no reason? So he had only thought that the other party was deliberately wearing the dragon robe to scare people. Only now, when the Chu king personally confirmed it, did he realize this person was not deliberately wearing the dragon robe to scare people, but was the real emperor of Yunyang country. That youth, he is going against the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The innkeeper of Chuxiu Inn was also an elder of the Chu royal household. When he realized that the youth had killed the emperor of Yunyang country, his first thought was that the youth had gotten into big trouble. Yunyang country was under the protection of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. And the one who controlled Yunyang country was the Jiang family of the imperial court of Yunyang country. As the head of the Jiang family, the current emperor of Yunyang country was naturally under the protection of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Not just the current emperor of Yunyang country, but the emperors of the 16 countries of the East Valley were also under the protection of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. In the past, there had been people who had killed the emperors of other countries, and some of them had been foreign Khanate adepts. But those people, without exception, had all been killed by the adepts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Over time, under the protection of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, the 16 countries of the East Valley no longer had any Khanate adepts who wanted to replace the royal family of any country and control that country. This was because the 16 countries of the East Valley were under the protection of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. And the Valley of the Medicine Masters was a powerful sect above the 16 countries of the East Valley. The sect had as many Khanate adepts as there were clouds in the sky, and they dominated the area. A large area around the 16 countries of the East Valley was basically considered by the Valley of the Medicine Masters as their own territory. Who else does he not dare to kill? After Xiang Xiong recovered, he smiled bitterly and looked at the innkeeper of Chuxiu Inn asking, only His Majesty went to cause trouble for that youth alone? There was also a huge white crane. The innkeeper of Chuxiu Inn said, take me to see it. Very quickly, Xiang Xiong saw the white crane that the innkeeper of Chuxiu Inn had mentioned. More accurately, it was the white crane's corpse. This is a silver-crowned crane. Although it was the first time that Xiang Xiong had seen this huge white crane, he had heard that the Valley of the Medicine Masters had a Khanate stage demon called the Silver-Crowned Crane. Your Highness, this can't be the Khanate stage Silver-Crowned Crane of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, right? Shuimeng, who was standing to one side, could not help but swallow hard when he heard Xiang Xiong's words and asked with difficulty. Most likely. Xiang Xiong smiled bitterly. Given His Majesty's cautiousness after learning that the retired emperor, who was at the Khanate stage, had been killed by that youth, he would not have come alone. He must have gone to the Valley of the Medicine Masters to ask for help. Now it seems that the Khanate stage Silver-Crowned Crane of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was the help he had asked for. However, he probably never imagined that even this Silver-Crowned Crane would not be a match for that youth and would die at his hands. This Khanate stage demon had already reached the Khanate stage 20 years ago, and even though it has not yet reached the middle Khanate stage, its power is not something that the retired emperor, who had only reached the Khanate stage a few years ago, can compare to. At this point, Xiang Xiong drew in a cold breath. As far as I know, this silver-crowned crane was the mount of the valley head of the medicine masters. Now that the silver-crowned crane is dead, the valley head of the valley of the medicine masters must be furious. The wrath of that late Khanate stage adept is even more terrifying than the wrath of the emperor in the 16 countries of the East Valley. That youth has really kicked an iron plate this time. As he muttered to himself, Xiang Xiong shook his head, and a look of pity appeared in his eyes. I've also heard that this Khanate stage silver-crowned crane, in the eyes of the valley head of the medicine masters, is no different from a close friend. A look of pity also appeared in Xuemeng's eyes. Now, whether it was Xiang Xiong or Xuemeng, they both felt that the youth named Zhou Donghuang was in deep trouble. They were both pitying each other's impending doom. Your Highness, what should our next step be? Should we send someone directly to the Valley of the Medicine Masters to report this, or should we send someone to report to the Imperial Court and let the Imperial Court report to the Valley themselves? Xuemeng asked. Commander Xue, personally make a trip to the Imperial City and report this to the Imperial Court. It is best to inform the Imperial Court of this matter as soon as possible. Xiang Xiong said gravely, otherwise the Imperial Court will definitely blame the Chu royal family. Yes, Your Highness. Xuemeng replied and left. The legend created by this youth who has the power to take on an entire country. I'm afraid it will soon be completely destroyed. After Xuemeng left, Xiang Xiong's eyes flashed as he muttered to himself. End of this chapter. Chapter 138. The climate of Ziyun was very similar to that of Earth. The location of the 16 countries of the East Valley was similar to that of Asia on Earth. At the end of November 1229 of the Ziyun era, the weather had turned cold. Chuxiu Inn in the courtyard of the third room. Aunt Lan, are you really not going to the Valley of the Medicine Masters with Big Brother Zhou? A young girl of about 16 or 17 wearing a rose-red mink coat sat at the stone table and asked the beautiful woman sitting opposite her. The beautiful woman was wearing a silver mink coat, looking elegant and serene. Yes. The beautiful woman nodded in response to the young girl's question. The country of Yunyang and the 16 countries of the East Valley are only the starting points of that child, Donghuang. The path that child will take is not limited to the 16 countries of the East Valley. I don't want to follow him and be a burden to him. Besides, in this past year, I have found that I am still not used to being in other places. Compared to the Chu royal city or even the prefecture capital of Yunfeng Prefecture, I still prefer Qingshan town. As she spoke, a smile appeared on the beautiful woman's face, and her eyes were filled with nostalgia. After being away for so long, Aunt Lien must miss me very much. When she mentioned Auntie Lien, the beautiful woman's autumn eyes promptly became as gentle as water. This was the first time in her life that she had been away from the old woman who had raised her for so long. She had personally witnessed the old woman's transformation from a middle-aged woman to her current appearance. Hee. At this time, a little girl of about 8 or 9 years old, who was also wearing a mink coat, ran over and sat beside the beautiful woman. Mother, if you want to go back to Qingshan town, Xiaolu will go with you. All right. Hearing the young girl's words, the beautiful woman smiled and agreed, secretly relieved. After all, she could decide the path she wanted to take, but she could not force others to follow her path. The young girl beside her had an imperceptible look of disappointment in her eyes. She looked at the beautiful woman and said with a smile, Aunt Lan, you don't mind if I go back with you, right? You don't want to be a burden to Big Brother Zhou, and neither do I. The three beauties around the table were Lin Lan, Yang Zishi, and Yun Lu. They were discussing their return to Qingshan town. The three women did not know that when they were discussing, their voices were clearly heard by Ah Fu, who had just walked out of his room, even though they were separated by 2 walls. Ah Fu's room was right next to the courtyard of the third guest room. That's right. If I were to follow the young master to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, wouldn't I be a burden to him? I'd better return to Qingshan town with Madame and Miss Xiaolu. Although Fu really wanted to continue following Zhou Donghuang, when he thought about the difference in power between him and his young master, he dismissed the idea of going to Qingshan town with him. After Fu gave up on the idea, he went to look for Leng Hanfeng, Lu Qinghu, Zhou Han, and Zhou Feng. He told them about the conversation he overheard between Lin Lan and the other 2 girls. For a moment, the 4 of them were silent. Since even Madame is unwilling to follow the young master to the Valley of the Medicine Masters for fear of being a burden to him, how can we be so selfish? Leng Hanfeng was the first to speak, his eyes shining. I've decided to return to Qingshan Town with Madam. In my spare time from practicing in Qingshan Town, I'll create a force in Yunfeng Prefecture to protect Madam and Miss Xiaolu. This way the young master will have less to worry about. Both Zhou Han and Zhou Feng saw Leng Hanfeng as their second parent and teacher. They would naturally follow Leng Hanfeng's decision unconditionally. I had originally planned to follow young Master Dong Huang and perhaps reach the Khanate stage in the future. But now it seems that even if I don't go to the Valley of the Medicine Masters with young Master Dong Huang, I am confident that I can reach the Khanate stage in my lifetime. Lu Qinghu's eyes flashed and he smiled. Since all of you intend to return to Yunfeng Prefecture with Madam, then I will return with you. From now on, as long as the Lu family is not destroyed, I will protect Madam. As his voice faded, Lu Qinghu's eyes flashed with incomparable determination. The Chu royal household. Your Highness, it has already been 3 months since Commander Xiao sent the message to the Imperial Court. Is there still no movement from the Imperial Court? In a spacious courtyard, a beautiful woman in luxurious clothes with hatred in her eyes asked a middle-aged man sitting at a table reading a book. The middle-aged man was wearing a dark gold robe embroidered with a 4-clawed golden dragon. He was the lord of the Chu royal household, the Chu king Xiang Xiong. As for the beautiful woman, she was his first wife, the Chu queen Fanji. Oh. Hearing Fanji's question, Xiang Xiong closed the book in his hands and shook his head. Something does not seem right. I asked Commander Xiao, and he went to the Imperial City at the end of September to inform the Imperial Court of the murder of His Majesty and the Khanate demon silver-crowned crane of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Fanji said in a low voice, I've estimated, if the Imperial Court were to report to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, it would take at least a month. After all, in the Imperial Court, besides the petty consummation flying demon, the Cloud Condor, they also have a petty consummation flying demon, the Fiery Lion. Even if the Ardent Flame Master is temporarily kept in the Valley of the Medicine Masters by His Majesty, the Imperial family has also domesticated 2 level 9 flying demons. With the speed of those 2 flying demons, they can reach the Valley of the Medicine Masters in less than a month. Even if they were slower, it would take at most a month. And even if the people from the Valley of the Medicine Masters did not have other Khanate demons as mounts, they still have many great consummation demons, including many flying demons. Even if the Valley Lord of the Valley of the Medicine Masters did not do it himself, other Khanate adepts would take at most half a month to reach the Chu royal city. But now 3 months have passed, and there is still no news from that side. As she said this, Fanji's expression was very ugly. Princess, you still can't let it go? Seeing Fanji like this, how could Xiang Xiong not know what she was thinking? For a moment he could not help but sigh. Your Highness, until now, I still dream of the Fan family begging me to avenge them. Fanji's eyes were full of hatred as she said in a suppressed voice, I only hate that I do not have the ability to avenge them. Otherwise, I would not need to count on the strong men of the Valley of the Medicine Masters to come and kill Zhou Donghuang to avenge the Khanate demon of the Valley of the Medicine Masters and the Emperor of Yunyang country. When Fanji reached the end of her sentence, her tone was so cold that it seemed to perfectly complement the cold weather, blending together perfectly. It's all my fault for not being able to avenge you. Xiang Xiong sighed. Your Highness, I do not blame you. Fanji's eyes were full of murderous intent. Every wrong has its perpetrator. Now, I only hope that the strong men of the Valley of the Medicine Masters will come quickly and kill Zhou Donghuang to avenge my Fan family. Even if they did not kill Zhou Donghuang to avenge my Fan family. Now Fanji was glaring fiercely, her eyes full of hatred. And almost at the same moment that Fanji finished speaking, bang! A loud sound suddenly rang out, startling Fanji so much that her body trembled involuntarily, and the book in Xiang Xiong's hand fell to the ground. In the next moment, both Fanji and Xiang Xiong realized that there was an additional person in the courtyard. The newcomer was dressed in a thin white robe, and his body was surrounded by a green light. When the green light expanded, it was at least a foot away from his body. A Khanate stage adept. Seeing this white figure with his back to them, Xiang Xiong and Fanji's eyes narrowed, and Fanji could not help but cry out. You are, from the Valley of the Medicine Masters? Xiang Xiong stood up, took a deep breath, and bowed respectfully to the white figure with his back to them. I did not intend to argue with you, but since you hate me so much, I cannot let you live, said a calm voice. Hearing this, Xiang Xiong's expression changed and his eyes narrowed. At the same time, the white figure finally turned around slowly. A handsome yet slightly childish face appeared before Xiang Xiong's eyes. The young man was dressed in a robe whiter than snow and had an extraordinary air about him. His eyelids were half-lidded, and his expression was extremely languid. Young Master Donghuang, Xiang Xiong's face was pale and his legs gave way as he fell to the ground in fright. We have no intention of making you our enemy. He had never imagined that in just a few months, the young man before him would enter the Khanate stage. An 18-year-old Khanate stage adept? Young Master Donghuang? Originally, Fanji had not been able to react when she heard the newcomer's words, but now that she heard how Xiang Xiong addressed him, her expression changed completely. This young man in white before them was the Zhou Donghuang who had commanded the 2 golden-crowned eagles to destroy the entire Fan family? You have no intention of making me your enemy? Zhou Donghuang glanced at the 2 of them indifferently, and his lips curled into a mocking smile. Then just now I was deaf? As he finished speaking, Zhou Donghuang waved his hand in the instant that their expressions changed. Whoosh! The sword sphere transformed into a sword, and the sound of the sword was fleeting as it took the lives of Xiang Xiong and Fanji. 15 minutes ago, Zhou Donghuang had just entered the Khanate stage, and as he continued to use the Lord of the Four Supremes, he found that he had entered an ethereal state. In that state, his hearing had reached a terrifying level, and it could be heard all the way from Chuxiu Inn to the Chu royal household. Although the Chuxiu Inn and the Chu royal household were not far apart, it was still a few hundred meters away, and there was also a lot of noise in between. But even so, in that ethereal state, Zhou Donghuang could clearly hear everything that was going on in the Chu royal household. This included the conversation between Xiang Xiong and Fanji. And because of this, when he recovered from that ethereal state and could no longer hear anything outside the Chuxiu Inn, he left the room immediately, leaping onto the roofs and vaulting over the walls to leave the Chuxiu Inn and head straight for the Chu royal household. End of chapter. Chapter 139. December 25, 1229 of the Ziyun era. Zhou Donghuang had officially entered the Khanate stage and become a Khanate adept. After killing Xiang Xiong, Zhou Donghuang did not use his swiftness techniques to leave the Chu royal household. Instead, he swaggered out of the courtyard where Xiang Xiong and his wife were staying. Furthermore, he kicked the door open with 1 foot. Who is it? The faces of the servants and guards standing guard outside the courtyard changed, but when they saw the young man walking out emitting a foot-long green light, they shut their mouths tightly, their eyes filled with fear. Emitting a foot-long qi was the hallmark of an early Khanate adept. This young man dressed in white was a Khanate adept? Zhou Donghuang glanced at the servants and guards, then turned and walked towards the main gate of the Chu royal household, controlling the release of qi in his body as he walked. He was adapting to the early Khanate stage. Although he had experienced this cultivation realm in his previous life, this cultivation realm was unfamiliar to his body in this life. He needed some time to get used to it. Maintaining the release of qi would allow him to adapt more quickly. Therefore, when Zhou Donghuang walked out of the main gate of the Chu royal household, most people in the Chu royal household already knew that their master, the Chu king Xiang Xiong, had been killed by a Khanate adept. The Chu king's wife, Fanji, had been killed together with him. About half an hour later. In the main hall of the Chu royal household. I just returned from Chuxiu Inn. The innkeeper of Chuxiu Inn saw Zhou Donghuang return to Chuxiu Inn, his body emitting a foot-long green light. The second elder of the Chu royal household, Xiang Donghua, had a solemn expression. It can be confirmed that the young man who killed the king and his wife and swaggered out of the Chu royal household is Zhou Donghuang. He has already entered the Khanate stage? The expression of Shui Meng, the commander of the Chu royal city guards, changed drastically. He seems to be only 18 years old? An 18-year-old Khanate adept? Now it seems that as long as the adepts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters do not appear, no one in the 16 countries of the East Valley will be able to deal with him. Commander Shui, you seem to have reported to the Imperial Court 2 months ago that His Majesty and the Khanate demon from the Valley of the Medicine Masters had been killed by Zhou Donghuang? Looking at the time, the people sent by the Valley of the Medicine Masters should have arrived long ago. Why haven't they arrived yet? The people from the Valley of the Medicine Masters will come sooner or later. They may not care about the death of our king, but they cannot possibly not care about the death of that silver-crowned crane. I think so too. That silver-crowned crane is not only the only Khanate stage demon in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, but it has also been the Valley Head's mount for many years. Although the Chu royal household had deliberately concealed the fact that the Chu king Xiang Xiong and the Chu royal consort Fanji had been killed, but too many people knew about it, so the news spread quickly. Immediately the entire Chu royal city was in an uproar. Both His Highness and His Highness died at the hands of Zhou Donghuang? Oh my god. That youth, isn't he worried that the imperial court of Yunyang country will punish him? The imperial court of Yunyang country? The last time the great consummation adepts sent by the imperial court of Yunyang had all been killed by him? Would he be afraid of the imperial court? No wonder everyone says he can take on an entire country by himself. The imperial court has not made a move yet, so they must be very wary of him. In the bordering regions of the 16 countries of the East Valley, if the Valley of the Medicine Masters does not act, I'm afraid no one can deal with him. I heard that after his murder today when he left the Chu royal household, he was surrounded by a foot of qi. He has obviously entered the Khanate stage. The Khanate stage? A youth like him has entered the Khanate stage? A youth at the Khanate stage, this is unbelievable. A youth at the Khanate stage not just in the country of Yunyang, but even in the bordering regions of the 16 countries of the East Valley, including the Valley of the Medicine Masters, there had never been such a person. The youth's achievements in the bordering regions of the 16 countries of the East Valley could be said to be unprecedented. The Tang family household. When the patriarch of the Tycoon Tang family, Tang Liuyin, heard that the youth had entered the Khanate stage, the first thing he wanted to do was visit to congratulate him, but on second thought he smiled bitterly and dismissed the idea. The imperial court of Yunyang country must not have the confidence to deal with him, and that is why they have not sent anyone. But as the saying goes, the tallest tree in the forest is the first to be destroyed by the wind. The masters of the Valley of the Medicine Masters will probably come to deal with him soon. Tang Liuyin sighed. Back then, when the retired emperor of the imperial court of Yunyang had died at the hands of Zhou Donghuang, this matter had been kept under tight wraps. Even the people of the tycoon families of the Chu royal city did not know about it. They only thought that the imperial court of Yunyang had only sent a great consummation adept of the Qi gathering and a petty consummation flying demon, and that they had died at the hands of the youth. Now I can only hope that the masters of the Valley of the Medicine Masters will be more willing to accept him into the Valley of the Medicine Masters and not kill him. Otherwise the heavens will really be jealous of him. Because he had considered the possibility that the Valley of the Medicine Masters would deal with the youth, Tang Liuyin had dismissed the idea of congratulating the youth. Today he congratulated the youth. The Chu royal household would not dare to touch him, the imperial court of Yunyang country would not dare to touch him. But what if the masters of the Valley of the Medicine Masters arrived and killed the youth? After the youth died, the imperial court of Yunyang country would not bother to touch him, but the Chu royal household would definitely not let him off. As the patriarch of the Tycoon Tang family, Tang Liuyin thought very far ahead. Yang family mansion. Yang Yunji, the patriarch of the Grand Yang family, knew that the youth had entered the Khanate stage and become a Khanate adept, and his expression was naturally very ugly. I can only hope that when the masters of the Valley of the Medicine Masters arrive, they will kill him directly, and not take him in because of his talent. Yang Yunji prayed silently, his eyes filled with a murderous look. Shi family mansion. The imperial court of Yunyang country has not sent anyone over for a long time, and there has been no movement from the Valley of the Medicine Masters either. Looks like the imperial court of Yunyang country does not intend to share with the Valley of the Medicine Masters the fact that Zhou Donghuang obtained the legacy of the primal core adept. Shi Yu, the first young master of the Tycoon Shi family, had a glint in his eyes. Otherwise, with the temptation of the legacy left behind by the primal core adept, the Valley of the Medicine Masters would definitely have made a move. The imperial court of Yunyang country must have hidden it from the Valley of the Medicine Masters because they want to keep the legacy of the primal core adept for themselves. Thinking of this, Shi Yu immediately left the Shi family mansion and headed for the Lu family mansion. The Lu family was one of the top 3 tycoon families in the Chu royal city, and they usually only had some business dealings with the Shi family with no other entanglements. However, when Shi Yu went to the Lu family this time, he went directly to the patriarch of the Lu family, Lu Yuanshan. Nephew Shi Yu, you asked a disciple of the Lu family to inform me that you have a way to establish a relationship between the Lu family and the Valley of the Medicine Masters? Is this true? Lu Yuanshan was a middle-aged man dressed in a long gray robe. He was thin and half of his hair had already turned white. He looked at Shi Yu with a serious expression. Patriarch Lu, how would I dare to lie in front of you? Shi Yu smiled faintly and said, I came here this time to give an opportunity to your Lu family. I would like to hear the details. Lu Yuanshan looked at Shi Yu with a piercing gaze. He did not think that a disciple of the inferior Tycoon Shi family would dare to make fun of him, the patriarch of the elite tycoon Lu family. Shi Yu took a deep breath and immediately revealed everything he knew about Zhou Donghuang. Now, both the Chu royal family and the imperial court already know that Zhou Donghuang has obtained the primal core adept's legacy. However, the imperial court obviously does not want to inform the Valley of the Medicine Masters of this matter. Otherwise, even if the imperial court does not dare to send anyone to deal with Zhou Donghuang, the Valley of the Medicine Masters would not have remained silent until now. Therefore, I conclude that the imperial court definitely did not inform the Valley of the Medicine Masters of this matter. As Shi Yu spoke to this point, Lu Yuanshan could not help but gasp. I really did not expect that Zhou Donghuang was born and raised in an inferior prefecture. I knew it, in the country of Yunyang, how could there be such a monster like him, an 18-year-old Khanate adept? So it turns out that he obtained the legacy of the primal core adept. No wonder. At this point, Lu Yuanshan looked deeply at Shi Yu. So, you Shi Yu want the Lu family to inform the Valley of the Medicine Masters of this matter? Why don't you go yourself? Lu Yuanshan asked. Patriarch Lu, you must be worried that the information is wrong and the Valley of the Medicine Masters will punish you? Shi Yu seemed to read Lu Yuanshan's mind at a glance and smiled faintly. How about this? I will go with you. The reason why I came to you is that your Lu family has a level 7 flying demon, the white-headed vulture. Of course, if you are not willing to go, I can go to the Ouyang family. As far as I know, the Ouyang family also has a level 7 flying demon. Shi Yu's smile remained as if he was certain that Lu Yuanshan would agree. The Chu royal family has a level 8 flying demon. Why don't you go to the Chu royal family? Lu Yuanshan asked again. Patriarch Lu, if the Chu royal family had such intentions, they would have gone to the Valley of the Medicine Masters themselves long ago. After all, the Chu royal family already knew that Zhou Donghuang had obtained the legacy of the primal core adept. Shi Yu shook his head. If I went to the Chu royal family, it would be useless. In that case, why should I go to the Valley of the Medicine Masters? Patriarch Lu, come with me to the Valley of the Medicine Masters. When the Valley of the Medicine Masters has obtained the primal core adept's legacy, they will not treat you badly. Shi Yu continued, if you are really not interested, I will go to the Ouyang family now. Lu Yuanshan's expression fluctuated, but in the end he still agreed, good. I will go with you. About a quarter of an hour later, a completely black vulture with white feathers around its bald head rose into the air from the Lu family mansion and flew out of the Chu royal city. This vulture was the Lu family's level 7 flying demon, the white-headed vulture. At this moment, on the back of the white-headed vulture stood Shi Yu and Lu Yuanshan. End of this chapter. Chapter 140. Big Brother, you've attained the Khanate stage? As the news that Zhou Donghuang had attained the Khanate stage spread throughout the Chu royal city, Yun Lu, who was in the third guest room of Chuxiao Inn, heard the whispers of the servant girls, and immediately ran to the second guest room to look for Zhou Donghuang. When Yun Lu arrived, the youth was sitting at the stone table drinking tea and basking in the sun. The green light surrounding his body had disappeared into his body not long ago. Wow! Big Brother is so powerful, an 18-year-old Khanate stage adept. I heard that in the history of the 16 countries of the East Valley, there has never been such a powerful person. Yun Lu jumped into the youth's arms and looked at him with admiration. She muttered, I wonder when I will be able to attain the Khanate stage like Big Brother. Silly girl, with your talent, you will definitely be the first to attain the Khanate stage apart from Big Gold and Big Gold. Zhou Donghuang patted the girl's head and smiled dotingly. Really? Yun Lu asked, her large watery eyes looking at him, as if to confirm what the youth had said. Of course. Zhou Donghuang nodded confidently. He had seen Yun Lu's improvement in this period of time. Yun Lu's current level of practice was almost on par with Lu Qinghu and Freezing Wind, who had the highest level of practice among the people around him. With Yun Lu's talent in martial arts, she would definitely be the first among the people around him to step into the innate realm and become a cultivator of the innate realm. When I attain the Khanate stage, I will no longer be a burden to Big Brother. Then, I can go to the Valley of the Medicine Masters to find Big Brother. Yun Lu's sparkling eyes were filled with yearning. Burden? Zhou Donghuang frowned. Xiao Lu, who said you were a burden to Big Brother? Big Brother, I let it slip. Mother said I can't tell Big Brother like that. Yun Lu giggled. Big Brother, you can't betray me. Mother said that? Zhou Donghuang's frown deepened. Xiao Lu, what's going on? Big Brother, Mother said that if we follow you to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, we will definitely be a burden to you. Also, she said that she likes Qingshan Town more, so she plans to leave the Chu royal household and return to Qingshan Town in Yunfeng Prefecture when you go to the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Yunlu blinked her big eyes and said. Hearing Yunlu's words, Zhou Donghuang shook his head and sighed. How can mother think that way? You will never be a burden. After hearing from Yunlu that Lin Lan was returning to Qingshan Town, Zhou Donghuang specially went to find Lin Lan and persuaded her to follow him to the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Mother, you will not be a burden to me. Moreover, in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, I can take better care of you. Donghuang, mother has already made up her mind. You don't have to persuade her anymore. Lin Lan said with a smile, do what you want to do. In the future, if you have time, come back to Qingshan Town often to visit me. Mother will also cultivate diligently, and strive to live to see you marry and have children, and have many children and grandchildren. As she said this, Lin Lan's eyes were filled with anticipation. Zhou Donghuang tried to persuade her for a while, but Lin Lan still did not budge. Finally, Zhou Donghuang could only give up. Mother, since you have really made up your mind, then I will not try to persuade you any further. Tomorrow I will personally send you back to Qingshan Town, and then accompany you for a while before going to the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Fortunately, the golden-crowned eagle Little Gold had now attained great consummation of the Qi gathering and had grown in size. Otherwise, the two golden-crowned eagles would not have been able to carry Zhou Donghuang and the others away from the Chu royal city and back to Qingshan Town in Yunfeng Prefecture. Sister Zixi, Auntie Mei, don't be afraid, even if you really fall, Little Gold will save you. On Little Gold's back, Yunlu sat cross-legged on Lin Lan's lap and smiled at Yang Zixi and her servant, who had their eyes closed. However, this was the first time that Yang Zixi and her servant had ridden on a golden-crowned eagle, and they did not dare to open their eyes for a long time. Only after a long time did Yang Zixi muster the courage to open her eyes and take in the surroundings. The few of you really do not intend to go to the Valley of the Medicine Masters with me? Zhou Donghuang asked calmly as he stood beside Lin Lan and looked at Fu, Freezing Wind, Lu Qinghu, Zhou Han, and Zhou Feng. Young master, since Madam has decided to return to Qingshan Town, I am also preparing to return to the Lu family. If Madam wishes to continue running the Magnolia Guild, the Lu family will be her greatest support. Lu Qinghu said with a smile, and his expression became more serious and solemn. Young master, if Fu follows you now, he will only be a burden to you. Moreover, Qingshan Town is Fu's hometown, and if Madam wishes to return, Fu wishes to go with her. Fu said. Young master, Zhou Han, Zhou Feng, and I will protect Madam and young mistress. You will not have to worry about anything when you go to the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Freezing Wind said. Zhou Donghuang nodded. To him, if all these people were by his side, he would indeed be unable to move around freely. Now that they were willing to stay, he did not try to persuade them otherwise. Of course, this did not mean that Zhou Donghuang intended to give up on them. On the contrary, Zhou Donghuang decided to nurture each and every one of them. This way, when he ascended to the divine realm, he would be able to leave behind a group of trusted aides that belonged solely to him in the secular universe to protect his mother Lin Lan, his sister Yunlu, and everyone else he cared about. The experience of his past life had taught him the importance of this. In the history of this secular universe, there had been many cases of strong practitioners who, after ascending to the divine realm, did not make arrangements for their friends and family in the secular universe, and their family and friends were sought after by their enemies. For some strong practitioners, after ascending to the divine realm, not only did their friends and family meet with misfortune, but even the sects and families that they had been in were also destroyed. Walking in this mundane universe, anything that he cared about was a weakness, unless he was an itinerant cultivator like in his previous life. At the same time, walking in this secular universe, it was inevitable that he would make enemies with some people and some forces. This was unavoidable, and it was not always possible to eliminate the root of the problem perfectly. Therefore, it was necessary to nurture a group of trusted aides that belonged solely to him. It's good that they are staying in Yunyang country. In the future, as long as I have practice resources, I can send them back to them. This way their growth will not be slow. Zhou Donghuang made up his mind in an instant. The two great consummation golden-crowned eagles flew back to Qingshan Town in Yunfeng Prefecture in just a few days, even without using their qi and relying on their own flying speed. They arrived at Qingshan Town on the 31st of December, the last day of year 1229 of the Ziyun era. Business at Yunxian restaurant was still booming. After Zhou Donghuang and the others had their meal in the heavenly dining booth of Yunxian restaurant, they returned to the courtyard behind Yunxian restaurant. Although it had been vacant for a long time, the chief steward of Yunxian restaurant, Lu Qing, a collateral descendant of the Lu family, was very meticulous as a woman and often arranged for the cleaning to be done. Therefore the place was kept clean, and Zhou Donghuang and the others could move in immediately when they returned. This Lu Qing of the Lu family is not bad. Zhou Donghuang was not stingy with his praise for what Lu Qing had done in front of Lu Qinghu. When I return to the Lu family, I will definitely reward her and her family handsomely. Lu Qinghu nodded in response. When do you intend to return to the Lu family? Zhou Donghuang asked. Qinghu wants to stay by your side before you leave, young master, and listen to your teachings. Lu Qinghu said seriously. Listening to my teachings is a pretense. Your real intention is for me to assist you in your practice, right? Zhou Donghuang looked deeply at Lu Qinghu, revealing his thoughts in one sentence, causing Lu Qinghu to laugh awkwardly. The main thing is, that mysterious golden light that you have created can increase the speed of my practice by more than 10 times. Although Lu Qinghu had been enjoying the Buddha's light that extended from the Buddhist essence to assist in his practice, he did not know that it was the Buddha's light from the Buddhist essence. He only knew that under the cover of the golden light, the speed of his practice had increased by more than 10 times. This was also the main reason why he could not bear to leave Zhou Donghuang before Zhou Donghuang left Qingshan town for the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Over the next few days, Zhou Donghuang constantly maintained the power of the Buddhist essence in his body, transforming it into a Buddha's light to assist Lu Qinghu and the others in their practice. As for him, he stayed by Lin Lan's side and chatted with her, starting from when they were young and talking about what had happened later. However, every time he mentioned Qin Dandan, Lin Lan's voice would stop abruptly. Qin Dandan. Zhou Donghuang's eyes flashed coldly. He knew that Qin Dandan was most likely in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and as long as he went there, he would be able to see Qin Dandan again. Qin Dandan, right now, perhaps you are still gloating over the fact that your biological father is the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, right? Don't worry, very soon, I will go to the Valley of the Medicine Masters and drag you from heaven to hell. At this thought, a murderous glint flashed across Zhou Donghuang's eyes. Following that, because Lin Lan mentioned Granny Lian many times, Zhou Donghuang specially drove Big Gold to the capital city of Yunfeng Prefecture to bring Granny Lian back to Qingshan town. At the same time, he wrote down a number of prescriptions for Lin Lan. Mother, among these prescriptions, there are the prescriptions for the Qi gathering elixir that you are currently using, as well as other elixirs and potions. Among them, there are some of the more precious herbs that Yunfeng Prefecture does not have. When I go to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, I will make a trip to the Chu royal household to get them to collect and send them to you. Seeing that Zhou Donghuang had given her the prescriptions, Lin Lan knew that her son was about to leave. Donghuang, when do you plan to leave? Lin Lan asked reluctantly. In another 2 days. Zhou Donghuang smiled. Mother, I will come back to see you when I have time. Big Gold will soon be able to attain the Khanate stage, and when it becomes a Khanate demon, it will only take a few days to travel from the Valley of the Medicine Masters to Qingshan town. End of this chapter. Chapter 141. Parting always makes people sad. Therefore, when Zhou Donghuang left this time, he only told his mother Lin Lan, and let Lin Lan pass the message on to the others. On the morning of the 8th day of the first month, 1230 of the Ziyun era, Zhou Donghuang rode on the golden-crowned eagle, Big Gold. One man and one eagle left Qingshan town and headed for the Valley of the Medicine Masters. As for the golden-crowned eagle, Little Gold, he was ordered by Zhou Donghuang to stay in Qingshan town to protect his mother Lin Lan, and his sister Yun Lu and the others. Little Gold, keep a close eye on them. If anything happens to my mother and Xiao Lu, I will hold you accountable. Little Gold was naturally very unwilling to stay in Qingshan town. After all, if it left the youth, it would no longer be able to enjoy the Buddhist light of the Buddhist essence, and its cultivation speed would also slow down. However, in the end, it had no choice but to submit to the young man's tyranny and stay obediently. Moreover, the young man also told it, once his big brother entered the Khanate state and became a Khanate demon, he would order his big brother to go back to Qingshan town and take over his shift. He would then send his big brother to the Valley of Medicine Masters to practice by his side. A few days later, Zhou Donghuang and Big Gold once again returned to the Chu royal city and appeared directly above the Chu royal household. Whoosh! Crash! When Big Gold landed in the Chu royal household with Zhou Donghuang on its back, it naturally caused quite a commotion. The guards who had heard the commotion quickly retreated, not daring to approach. A golden-crowned eagle. The youth in white behind the golden-crowned eagle. Could he be that young Khanate master? In our country of Yunyang, besides him, no one else has a golden-crowned eagle as a mount. As the guards whispered among themselves, the second elder of the Chu royal family, Xiang Donghua, appeared with a few other elders of the Chu royal family, bowing respectfully to the youth. Greetings, young Master Donghuang. At this moment, the group of guards watching from afar, upon hearing the words of the second elder of the Chu royal household, confirmed the identity of the youth. It was the young Khanate stage expert Zhou Donghuang. As the Ziyun era entered the year 1230, Zhou Donghuang could be considered to have crossed the threshold of 19 years old. However, his face still carried a hint of childishness, to the extent that when others saw him, they would still subconsciously think that he was just a teenager. Strictly speaking, in the Ziyun planet, anyone who had reached the age of 18 was considered a youth. Who is in charge of the Chu royal family now? Zhou Dong stood on the back of the golden-crowned eagle, his hands clasped behind his back as he looked down at Xiang Donghua and the other elders of the Chu royal household. Reporting to young Master Donghuang, head elder and I are currently in charge. Xiang Donghua replied respectfully. Although the young man before them had killed the king and princess of the Chu royal family, he was a Khanate stage adept, which meant that the Chu royal family could only suffer in silence. Send people from the Chu royal household to search for the herbs on this piece of paper. No matter how many you find, send them to Qingshan town in Yunfeng prefecture and hand them over to my mother. Zhou Donghuang raised his hand, and a piece of paper floated out and flew towards Xiang Donghua. Understood. Xiang Donghua took the paper and without even looking at it, he respectfully responded. This is a second-grade offensive technique. Consider it a token of appreciation for the Chu royal family's hard work. In the future, when I return to Qingshan town, if I find that you are efficient, I will give you another second-grade swiftness technique. Zhou Donghuang raised his hand again, and another piece of paper filled with words flew out towards Xiang Donghua. This time, after hearing Zhou Donghuang's words, Xiang Donghua's eyes narrowed, and his face turned red as he hurriedly reached out to catch the piece of paper that Zhou Donghuang had thrown over. As the second elder of the Chu royal household, Xiang Donghua was a petty consummation adept of the Qi gathering, and with just one look, he could tell that the piece of paper in his hand contained a second-grade technique. Before this, the Chu royal household had only had a few third-grade techniques, and no second-grade techniques at all. Second-grade techniques, even in the imperial court of Yunyang, were extremely rare, so much so that the imperial court of Yunyang was unwilling to share them with the various royal households. Big Gold, let's go. As Xiang Donghua and the elders of the Chu royal household looked excited, Zhou Donghuang called out to Big Gold, and it spread its wings and transformed into a bolt of black lightning that shot into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. Even if Zhou Donghuang did not give the Chu royal household any benefits, he was not worried that they would not help him. However, if the Chu royal household were to help him because of his threat, they would definitely not be very efficient. But now he had given the Chu royal household a second-grade offensive technique, and had even promised that if they were efficient he would give them another second-grade swiftness technique. Under such circumstances, the Chu royal household would definitely do their best to help him, and they would be as efficient as possible. Whoosh! After Zhou Donghuang left the Chu royal city on the golden-crowned eagle, Big Gold, he headed in the direction of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Before leaving the Chu royal household, he had already obtained a map of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and he had shown it to Big Gold before setting off this time. Therefore, Big Gold now knew the way from the Chu royal city to the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Although Big Gold had not yet attained the Khanate stage and become a Khanate demon, in terms of speed, few great consummation flying demons could match its speed. In less than 10 days, Big Gold had already left the borders of Yunyang country. And during this time, Zhou Donghuang had been sitting cross-legged on its back practicing, allowing the strong wind to blow against him, but it did not affect him in the slightest. The Valley of the Medicine Masters was located in the southwest of Yunyang country, and it was still some distance from Yunyang country. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Young Master, we've arrived. From the Chu royal city of the western ridge of the Chu king in Yunyang country, Big Gold had spent 10 days to reach the skies above the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and had informed Zhou Donghuang at the same time. We've arrived? Zhou Donghuang woke up from his practice, opened his eyes and looked in front of him. With just one glance, he could see the vast valley in front of him. Within the valley, he could vaguely see a forest of buildings, and in addition, there were several roads that passed in front of those buildings, leading out of the valley. The environment of the Valley of the Medicine Masters is not bad. In the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located, apart from the forest of buildings, it still maintained the original appearance of the forest. Everywhere was green, and looking from afar it was relaxing. "Young master, shall we go in directly?" In the blink of an eye, Big Gold had carried Zhou Donghuang to the outer skies of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and as it flew in circles, it asked Zhou Donghuang. "Directly in," Zhou Donghuang said lightly. The master of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, the valley head Sua Mo, had now acknowledged him as his master, and was willing to be his dog. Now that he had come to his dog's territory, did he still need to go to the mountain gate of the Valley of the Medicine Masters to let someone in to inform him? Yes. Big Gold responded, and with a flap of its wings, it seemed to transform into a bolt of black lightning, piercing through the air into the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located, and in the blink of an eye, it was in the skies above the valley. "Young master, how do we find the valley head?" Big Gold asked Zhou Donghuang as it flew in circles above the valley. "Wait a moment, he will naturally come," Zhou Donghuang said lightly. From his words, it was as if he was certain that the valley head Sua Mo would personally come to welcome him. As he finished speaking, Zhou Donghuang, who had been sitting cross-legged on Big Gold's back, closed his eyes to rest. In each of the directions of the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located, there was a lookout tower, and there were usually elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters riding on great consummation flying demons on duty there. When they were on duty, their main duty was to act as the eyes of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, keeping watch in all directions. In the sky above the Valley of the Medicine Masters, a flying demon beast suddenly appeared, and one of the elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was the first to notice it. "It looks like an eagle-type demon beast. It looks like the one riding it here is the esteemed guest that the Valley Lord spoke about previously." Some time ago, the Valley head, Sua Mo, had returned from outside and immediately summoned a group of elders on duty at the observation towers, instructing them to keep an eye on the skies above the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located for a period of time. If someone rode an eagle demon into the valley, they were not to offend the intruder, and had to inform him immediately. He said that the intruder was his esteemed guest, and that he would personally receive him. As he muttered to himself, the valley elder leapt onto the back of a huge gray eagle, and steered the eagle into a streak of gray light, flying towards one side of the valley. This gray eagle was one of the great consummation flying demons reared by the Valley of the Medicine Masters, the thunder-feathered eagle. Most of the great consummation flying demons reared by the Valley of the Medicine Masters were flying demons. And this was all thanks to the Valley of the Medicine Masters' Khanate demon, the silver-crowned crane. As a Khanate stage flying demon, the silver-crowned crane could easily kill great consummation flying demons and steal their eggs. Those eggs eventually became the property of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Valley head. As the elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters rode the thunder-feathered eagle to the residence of Sua Mo, the valley head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, he reported to Sua Mo that someone had arrived on an eagle-type demon beast. Sua Mo hurriedly leapt onto the back of the thunder-feathered eagle and steered it into the air. "What esteemed guest is it, to make the valley head rush to receive him?" The valley elder looked at the thunder-feathered eagle, which had become a small black dot in the blink of an eye, and his face was full of shock. Even when the leader of the Guiyuan sect came last time, the valley head did not lose his composure like this. The Guiyuan sect was a sect comparable in power to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and its leader was also a late Khanate stage adept. The Valley of the Medicine Masters ruled over a large area around the 16 countries of the East Valley, and the Guiyuan sect ruled over a large area around the 14 countries of the southern border. Sua Mo greets master. In just a quarter of an hour, Zhou Donghuang, who was sitting cross-legged on the back of the golden-crowned eagle, saw the valley head, Sua Mo, arrive. When Sua Mo saw the youth again, he knelt respectfully on the back of the thunder-feathered eagle, his demeanor humble and docile, like a cat. Fortunately, the thunder-feathered eagle had not yet awakened its intelligence. Otherwise, seeing the valley head kneeling in front of a youth, it would have been so frightened that it forgot to flap its wings and fell from the sky. End of this chapter. Chapter 142. Ever since his last serious injury when he returned to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, it was not that Sua Mo had not considered pretending to obey, gambling that the youth might not be able to display the power of the Khanate stage to crush him again. But every night, the scene of the youth crushing him would appear again and again. Every time he was on the brink of death, he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. In the end, Suemo no longer dared to entertain any hopes of getting lucky. Acknowledging the youth as his master, although humiliating, would at least allow him to live. He had practiced for more than 60 years and entered the late Khanate stage. With his martial talent, he still had a chance to reach the primal core stage before his lifespan came to an end. Once he entered the primal core stage, his lifespan would break through and he would be able to live for 300 years. If he could not enter the primal core stage, he would live for 100 years at most. But once he entered the primal core stage, he could live for another 200 years. He was not willing to die for the sake of his dignity. Zhou Donghuang lazily opened his eyes and glanced at Suemo, the valley head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, who was respectfully kneeling on the back of the thunder-feathered eagle, and replied calmly, "Get up." Only when the youth spoke did Suemo dare to stand up and say respectfully, "Master, you must be tired from the journey. Shall I arrange a place for you to rest?" Zhou Donghuang nodded. "Arrange a quiet place for me." In a moment, Suemo led the way on the thunder-feathered eagle, bringing Zhou Donghuang and the golden-crowned eagle in the direction of his residence. Finally, they landed halfway up the mountain, in front of a cave with a small path that led to the main roads of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. However, far away from the cave at the two corners of the path, there were two huge stone tablets, on which the words Forbidden Grounds were carved. The words Forbidden Grounds were carved with red ink, making it very conspicuous. "Master, this is the training ground of my master, the previous head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. It is a completely different world inside, incomparably quiet. Go in and take a look. If you are satisfied, you can stay here. If you are not satisfied, I will give you my residence at the foot of the mountain," Suemo said respectfully. The entrance of the cave was very large, more than 10 meters high and 5 or 6 meters wide. Even if Big Gold entered the Khanate stage, he would still be able to come and go as he pleased. "Master, please." After Suemo leaped off the back of the thunder-feathered eagle and landed, he led the way in front. Zhou Donghuang also landed and followed behind him into the cave. The thunder-feathered eagle obediently waited outside while Big Gold followed them in. After entering the cave, they could see a faint white light in the depths of the cave. After walking for 10 meters, the white light became brighter and brighter. At the same time, they arrived at a corner. After turning the corner, they entered an incomparably large cave. This cave was extremely spacious. It was more than 50 meters long, no less than 40 meters wide, and 20 meters high. It was as if the belly of the mountain had been hollowed out. Seeing this, Zhou Donghuang's heart skipped a beat. With such a large cave, even if Big Gold reaches the ultimate Khanate stage, it can still spread its wings freely here. Inside the cave, there were artificial green plants all around, and there was no lack of plants that could be used as medicinal herbs, emitting a fragrant aroma. In addition, at one side of the cave there was a small waterfall. Water overflowed from the corner of one side of the cave and flowed down at a steady pace, nourishing the plants around the cave. In the cave there was a standalone wooden hut. The furnishings inside were simple, and besides a wooden bed and a wooden table, there was nothing else. "Master, what do you think?" Suemo looked at the youth and asked uneasily. "Yes." Seeing the youth nod, Suemo heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, he took out a token that he had prepared earlier and handed it to the youth. "Master, this is the Medicine Master token. Seeing the token is like seeing me. With this Medicine Master token, it will be more convenient for you in the Valley of the Medicine Masters in the future." There was only one Medicine Master token in the entire Valley of the Medicine Masters, and it was usually in the hands of the successive valley heads. When the valley head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters handed the Medicine Master token to someone, it also meant that that person had the same level of authority as the valley head. Zhou Donghuang took the token and stuffed it into his pocket. He did not even look at this token that symbolized the highest level of authority in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. "Master, when it's mealtime, I will arrange for someone to deliver your meal to you," Suemo continued. Zhou Donghuang nodded again. "In that case, I will not disturb Master's rest." As Suemo bowed and retreated, he added, "Master, I live at the foot of the mountain below this cave. If you need anything, you can look for me at any time." "Wait." Just as Suemo was about to leave, Zhou Donghuang called out to him. He took out a piece of paper from his pocket and threw it at him from afar. The light piece of paper floated in the air as if it had a life of its own, and it slowly landed in Sumo's hands. "I have an urgent need for the herbs written on it. Gather them and send them over as soon as possible," Zhou Donghuang said. "Yes, master." As he replied respectfully, Su Mo subconsciously glanced at the large pile of herbs recorded on the paper. And it was this one glance that made him completely stunned. Master, you are planning to formulate Khanate elixir? As the head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Su Mo was not only skilled in martial arts, but he was also very skilled in medicine. Su Mo was a true Earth-level medicine master. As an Earth-level medicine master, Su Mo could formulate a Qi-gathering elixir that doubled the sensitivity to Qi, which was twice as good as the superior-level medicine master of the Imperial Court of Yin-Yang, who could formulate a Qi-gathering elixir that doubled the sensitivity to Qi. Khanate elixir was as important to Khanate adepts as Qi-gathering elixir was to Qi-gathering adepts. Of course, no matter how good the Qi-gathering elixir was, it was almost useless to Khanate adepts, because the Qi-gathering elixir was only a supplementary medicine for Qi-gathering adepts. Once one entered the Khanate stage, the method of practice changed, and the sensitivity to Qi was almost at its peak. No matter how many Qi-gathering elixirs one consumed, the sensitivity to Qi would not increase. Zhou Donghuang nodded lightly. I have just entered the Khanate stage and do not have any Khanate elixir on hand. I am preparing to make some. Master, if these are all the herbs needed to make Khanate elixir, then I am afraid there is something wrong with your formula. Su Mo glanced at the herbs written on the paper again, frowning slightly. There is nothing wrong. Zhou Donghuang said lightly. Master, many of the herbs you have written here have conflicting medicinal properties. If you mix them together, I am afraid it will cause considerable harm to the body. Su Mo's frown deepened. As the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters, don't you know that, as long as the balance of conflicting medicinal properties is well controlled, not only will it not harm the body, but it can even have a miraculous effect? Zhou Donghuang glanced at Su Mo casually. Hearing Zhou Donghuang's words, Su Mo was stunned at first, and then he could not help but gasp. Master, you mean you can control the balance of them? As far as he knew, to control the balance of conflicting medicinal properties, not to mention the balance of multiple conflicting medicinal properties, even the balance of two conflicting medicinal properties could only be achieved by a heaven-level medicine master. Zhou Donghuang replied once again and said somewhat impatiently, All right, you can go now, prepare those herbs for me as soon as possible, I have an urgent need for them. Ever since he had entered the Khanate stage, Zhou Donghuang had wanted to make Khanate elixir to aid in his practice. However, in the country of Yin-Yang, it was very difficult to gather the herbs needed to make the Khanate elixir, so it had been delayed until now. In fact, the reason he had thought of coming to the Valley of Medicine Masters was that the Valley of Medicine Masters could provide him with the herbs needed to make the Khanate elixir, and at the same time he wanted to further understand the situation on Ziyun planet. In his previous life, after he had attained the primal core stage and left Earth, although he had returned to Ziyun planet, he had not gone anywhere else but to Yin-Yang country. He only knew that Yin-Yang country was one of the 16 countries of the East Valley, and that the area surrounding the 16 countries of the East Valley was the territory of a sect called the Valley of Medicine Masters. He knew nothing else about the situation on Ziyun planet? Yes. Seeing that the youth was getting impatient, Su Mo hurriedly acknowledged and retreated, but his heart was still filled with shock. If he can really control the balance of the conflicting medicinal properties of those herbs, the Khanate elixir he makes can retain at least 30% of Qi. Qi-gathering adepts relied on the Qi-gathering elixir to practice and increase their sensitivity to Qi, thereby increasing the speed of practice. Khanate stage adepts, on the other hand, did not need to use the Qi-gathering elixir because their sensitivity to Qi had reached its upper limit. However, Khanate stage adepts, although their sensitivity to Qi had reached its upper limit and they could absorb as much spirit as possible and convert it into Qi for practice, it was difficult to retain even 10% of the converted Qi. Once they used the Khanate elixir, they could increase the retention of Qi. Originally, it was difficult to retain even 10%, but with the power of the Khanate elixir, they could retain an additional 10% or even 20% of Qi. For example, as an Earth-level medicine master, the Khanate elixir formulated by Su Mo could increase the retention of Qi to 15%. This was already a very high retention rate. After Su Mo left, Zhou Donghuang returned to the wooden hut and prepared to practice. The furnishings in the wooden hut had obviously been cleaned every once in a while. Although there was some dust, it was not much. Sitting cross-legged on the wooden bed, Zhou Donghuang's eyes flashed as he muttered to himself, If I only rely on the Lord of the Four Supremes to practice, I can only retain 50% of the Qi converted from spirit. And once I formulate the Khanate elixir, I can increase the retention of Qi by 40%, allowing me to retain 90% of Qi during practice. As he thought of this, Zhou Donghuang's eyes shone with anticipation. However, I never thought that the Khanate portion of the Lord of the Four Supremes would be so powerful, directly retaining 50% of Qi. Even top-notch techniques such as the Thousand-Star Sword Technique, the Fiery Thunder Training Regimen, and the Manual of Unruffled Sage can only retain 40% of Qi at the Khanate stage. I've heard of techniques that can retain 50% of Qi at the Khanate stage in my previous life, but they usually only exist in legends. I never thought that such a legendary technique could be found on Earth. Chapter 143. It had to be said that Suemo was very efficient. The next day he had brought all the herbs that Zhou Donghuang needed to Zhou Donghuang, as well as the tools that Zhou Donghuang needed to formulate the elixir. Not bad. Seeing Su Missouri place the herbs and tools on the table, Zhou Donghuang nodded in satisfaction and immediately got off the bed to come to the table. Master, are you starting to formulate the Khanate elixir? Seeing Zhou Donghuang pick up the tools and weigh them, then look at the pile of herbs, Sumo's eyes could not help but light up, but then they dimmed and he turned to leave. Master, I'll excuse myself. Who said you could excuse yourself? Zhou Donghuang said lightly. Hearing the youth's words, Suemo stopped in his tracks and turned back to look at the youth. Master, you mean I can observe you formulate the elixir? As he spoke, Sumo's eyes shone brightly, full of anticipation. It must be known that most medicine masters, including himself, would not allow anyone to observe unless the person present was their own direct disciple. First, they were afraid that someone would steal the formula, and second, they were afraid that someone would steal the special technique. Zhou Donghuang responded lightly and then ignored Suemo. He picked up the herbs and tools and began to formulate the Khanate elixir he needed. At first, Suemo thought that the youth's movements were ordinary. But as time passed, he realized that the youth's speed was as fast as lightning, and even his hands seemed to become a blur, dazzling a late Khanate adept like him. If it had been any other youth who said that he could produce Khanate elixir, Suemo would not have believed it. But the youth before him could not be compared to any other youth. Which youth had the ability to suppress a late Khanate adept like him and force him to acknowledge him as his master? Because of this, when the youth said that he wanted to formulate the Khanate elixir, he did not doubt that the youth could produce it, but was shocked by the herbs that the youth wanted him to gather. Many of the herbs had conflicting properties, and even an ordinary heaven-level medicine master would find it difficult to maintain a balance between them in the process of formulating the same medicine. However, although Suemo did not doubt the youth's ability, he was still shocked by the youth's method of formulating the elixir. This was the first time he had seen such a swift and mysterious technique. It was as if all the medicinal herbs had come to life in the hands of the youth. After about 15 minutes, Zhou Donghuang stopped. He had prepared 12 bottles of Khanate elixir with the herbs that Suemo had brought. Are you done? Suemo was dumbfounded. It had only been a quarter of an hour, right? Even an earth-rank apothecary like him would need at least an hour to concoct the Xiantian elixir in his best condition. But now the young man before him had only spent a quarter of an hour. Moreover, in the process of concocting the Xiantian elixir, he had used several medicinal herbs with conflicting medicinal properties, as if balancing the medicinal properties of those medicinal herbs was a piece of cake for him. I won't take advantage of you either. Zhou Donghuang picked up a bottle of Khanate elixir and poured it into his mouth. After swallowing it, he kept 9 bottles of Khanate elixir and left the other 2 bottles on the table. You give me this amount of herbs and I'll give you 2 bottles of Khanate elixir. Without waiting for Sumo's reply, he returned to the wooden bed to practice. Waves of golden light emanated from his body, not only enveloping him, but even reaching out to envelop the golden-crowned eagle Big Gold, who was practicing outside the wooden hut. Of course, it only enveloped him and Big Gold, and not Suemo inside the cave. The walls of the cave were inlaid with luminous pearls, so that even though the cave was in the middle of the mountain, it was still extremely bright. These luminous pearls ranged from the size of a fist to the size of an egg. They were extremely valuable, but here they were only used for illumination. And the light of the luminous pearls also merged with the power of the Buddhist essence, and naturally transformed into a golden Buddha light. Master, then I'll take my leave. Although he was puzzled by the rising golden light from Zhou Donghuang's body, Suemo did not dare to ask too many questions. He picked up the 2 bottles of Khanate elixir on the table and left. Then he immediately returned to his residence, swallowed 1 bottle of Khanate elixir and began to practice. After a while, Suemo, who had been practicing with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes, and they were filled with shock and disbelief. 40%? After swallowing that bottle of Kanate elixir, when I practice, the retention rate of chi has increased by an additional 40%. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Although Suemo had been mentally prepared for this, and had thought that the Kanate elixir that the youth had formulated would increase the retention rate of chi by at least 30%, it would at least increase it by 30%. But now he realized that he had underestimated the youth. An additional 40% increase in the retention rate of chi? The Kanate elixir that I formulated can only increase the retention rate of chi by 16%. That is to say, if I have an endless supply of this Kanate elixir in the future, the speed of my practice in the future will be nearly 2 times faster than before. At this thought, Suemo sucked in a breath of cold air, and his eyes shone brightly as his face twitched in excitement. He just said, "For every 12 bottles of Kanate elixir that I give him, he will give me 2 bottles." At this thought, Suemo stopped practicing, walked out of his room, and gathered a few of the elders in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. He gave them orders to gather all the herbs that the youth needed. Although there were still many herbs in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, he felt that it was far from enough, and he wanted more. In the next few decades, if I continue to use this Kanate elixir to practice, I have a 90% chance of breaking through the Kanate shackles, entering the Primal Core stage and becoming a Primal Core adept. Suemo was extremely excited. To him, there was nothing more important than entering the Primal Core stage and becoming a Primal Core adept. Once he became a Primal Core adept, his lifespan would be extended to 300 years, and he would have nearly 200 more years to spend. That was also his life's goal. It seems that this master of mine has made the right choice. If Suemo had previously been completely forced to acknowledge Zhou Donghuang as his master, then now he felt that he had made the right choice. In the past, with the Kanate elixir that he had formulated, he had less than a 10% chance of entering the Primal Core stage and becoming a Primal Core adept. But now, with the Kanate elixir that his master had formulated, he had more than a 90% chance of entering the Primal Core stage and becoming a Primal Core adept. To Zhou Donghuang, giving Suemo 2 bottles of Kanate elixir was more to motivate Suemo to help him gather the herbs to formulate the Kanate elixir. Now, with the help of the Buddhist essence and the Kanate elixir, Zhou Donghuang's level of practice was even faster. With this level of practice, in at most a month's time, I will definitely enter the middle Kanate stage. Zhou Donghuang was very satisfied with his current rate of practice. Of course, if he concentrated on practicing, there would always be times when it got boring. At this time, if he continued to practice, the results would not be much better, and it might even drag down his future practice. As someone with 1,000 years of memories from his past life, Zhou Donghuang naturally knew how to solve this problem. Going out for a walk and completely relaxing before continuing to practice would be more effective than continuing to practice. I've been in the Valley of the Medicine Masters for some time. I haven't gone out yet. With this thought, Zhou Donghuang left the cave abode and walked out of the cave. As for the golden-crowned eagle, Big Gold, although it had discovered that the Buddhist light that could help it speed up its practice had disappeared, it was still immersed in practice, working hard to enter the Kanate stage and become a Kanate demon. After walking out of the cave, Zhou Donghuang followed the small path in front of the cave and walked onto one of the main roads in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. At the beginning he did not see anyone along the way. And along the way, his position was in the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located, and it was also relatively secluded. Gradually, as he walked out of the secluded corner of the valley, he saw some disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters shuttling back and forth at various intersections. Among these disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, there were young men, young women, middle-aged women, and women. Occasionally, a few elderly people could be seen. Of course, the elderly people might not necessarily be elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, but they might just be disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. In the Valley of the Medicine Masters, being older only meant that one was older, but it did not mean that one's status in the Valley of the Medicine Masters was achieved through one's martial ability. I don't think I've seen you before. Did you just enter the Valley of the Medicine Masters recently? Zhou Donghuang had been walking quietly by himself when suddenly, a voice came from not far away, and a youth who looked to be about 16 or 17 years old walked towards him. The youth was dressed in blue, and his features could not be considered handsome, but he could be considered delicate and pleasing to the eye. He greeted Zhou Donghuang in a friendly manner. "I'm Huang Mingfeng, what about you?" Zhou Donghuang only glanced at the young man in blue, who was acting friendly before looking away. He had no intention of responding to him and continued walking along the main road. Hey, I say, why are you so rude? Didn't you hear me talking to you? Huang Mingfeng said unhappily as he caught up with Zhou Donghuang and walked side by side with him. Do you know where Qindandan lives? Zhou Donghuang glanced at Huang Mingfeng as he asked. Qindandan? Huang Mingfeng was taken aback at first, but then he shook his head. You rascal, although you're not bad looking, if you want to pursue Sister Qindandan because of that, I'm afraid that's not very realistic. Who said I wanted to pursue her? Zhou Donghuang was taken aback for a moment and then he laughed disdainfully. That Qindandan was worthy of him, Zhou Donghuang, pursuing? What a joke. Chapter 144. If you're not wooing her, why are you asking where she lives? Hearing Zhou Donghuang's words, Huang Mingfeng's face was full of disbelief, and his eyes were filled with suspicion. I'm asking where she lives because I'm going to settle old scores with her. Zhou Donghuang's eyes narrowed slightly as he spoke calmly. Settle old scores with Qindandan? After looking at Zhou Donghuang seriously and confirming that he did not seem to be joking, Huang Mingfeng shook his head and said, Brother, although I don't like that Qindandan either, but that Qindandan is not someone ordinary disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters like us can afford to offend. Her father is the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe. The second elder is a mid-Khanate stage adept, and his ability is so strong that he can even be ranked in the top 5 of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Although I don't know what grudge you have with Qindandan, I advise you to let go of it. Huang Mingfeng's words were earnest and well-meaning. The second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe? The corner of Zhou Donghuang's mouth had unknowingly turned up in an arc, and there was a hint of disdain in it. You don't have to care about anything else. Just tell me, do you know where she lives? She usually stays at the second elder's place. Seeing that the youth not only did not heed his warning but continued to inquire about Qindandan's residence after hearing his warning, Huang Mingfeng could not help but regard the youth in a higher light. This handsome youth dressed in a snow-white robe, with an extraordinary aura, could it be that he had some powerful background and was not afraid of the second elder, Qin Tianhe, who was backing Qindandan? Because under such circumstances, anyone who could still be so confident was either truly confident or deliberately mystifying. And the person before him did not seem to be the latter. But, when I came over from the training grounds just now, I happened to see Qindandan sparring with someone there. I think she should still be there now and has not returned. Youths like to watch a show, and seeing that Zhou Donghuang was not the least bit afraid after knowing Qindandan's background, Huang Mingfeng naturally thought that Zhou Donghuang had an even more powerful background. Training grounds? Where? Zhou Donghuang's eyes flashed as he asked. Over there. Huang Mingfeng turned his head to look at one of the forks in the road and pointed into the distance. Go this way. After walking for a while you'll see another road on the right. Forget it, I have nothing to do now. I'll take you there. With that, Huang Mingfeng beckoned to Zhou Donghuang and led the way. Zhou Donghuang followed. Brother, you haven't told me your name yet. Huang Mingfeng turned to look at Zhou Donghuang and asked. Zhou Donghuang. Zhou Donghuang said lightly. Brother Donghuang, how did you become enemies with Qindandan? Huang Mingfeng asked again. As far as I know, she has just arrived at the Valley of the Medicine Masters not long ago, and is the daughter of the second elder who was stranded outside. It is said that she grew up in a small place in the country of Yunyang. That small place is so small that we can't even imagine it. In that small place, even a mere level 2 adept of qi gathering can rule over a small area. Once Huang Mingfeng opened his mouth, it was as if he could not stop talking. It is said that it was a small preeminent family in an inferior county city that helped second elder find her. Then that small preeminent family's young master even became second elder's disciple. Hong Yunfei? Zhou Donghuang asked. Yes, it is Hong Yunfei. Huang Mingfeng nodded, his face full of surprise. Brother, so you know that Hong Yunfei. But it is a pity that Hong Yunfei originally thought that by following Qindandan, he would be able to climb the social ladder of the second elder, but who would have thought that after the second elder and Qindandan acknowledged each other as father and daughter, Qindandan chased him out of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. That Qindandan is really ungrateful. Even if she did not want to be close to Hong Yunfei, he still helped her find her biological father. Surely she would not burn the bridge after crossing it? As he spoke, Huang Mingfeng shook his head. That Qindandan is not bad looking, but her character is really not good. Snakes and scorpions, the ancients did not lie. Hearing Huang Mingfeng say that Hong Yunfei had been chased out of the Valley of the Medicine Masters by Qin Dandan, Zhou Donghuang was not surprised. With Qin Dandan's character, after finding out that her father was the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, it was naturally impossible for her to continue being with Hong Yunfei. But what he did not expect was, Qin Dandan had actually chased Hong Yunfei out of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. "Brother, you still haven't told me, how did you become enemies with that Qin Dandan?" Huang Mingfeng asked again. "It can't be considered a feud, I can only say that she owes my mother quite a bit of debt." Zhou Donghuang's eyes flashed, and his tone became cold in an instant. "I'm going to collect my debt." It was time for Qin Dandan to collect the debt that she owed his mother Lin Lan. "Your mother?" Huang Mingfeng was taken aback and asked again, "Brother, who exactly are you? How did that Qin Dandan owe your mother a debt? Did she owe it before she returned to the Valley of the Medicine Masters?" Huang Mingfeng had too many questions in his heart now. Is the training grounds just ahead? At the same time, Zhou Donghuang happened to be following Huang Mingfeng along another main road in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. At this time, his field of vision also widened, and he could see the vast field in the middle of the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located. In that vast field, a sparse crowd was gathered everywhere, and in the midst of the crowd, there were two figures flashing about, obviously sparring. Of course, there were also some people gathered in a corner of that vast field, either sitting or standing, talking and laughing, obviously chatting about everything under the sun. Not bad. Huang Mingfeng nodded in response, and at the same time, he further realized that this unfamiliar youth must have indeed just arrived in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, otherwise it would be impossible for him not to know about the training grounds of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Now there is still some time before the Valley of the Medicine Masters recruits disciples from the 16 countries of the East Valley, and I am from the previous batch of new disciples who passed the assessment of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. And if he has just arrived in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, it means that he has been specially recruited by the higher-ups of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Huang Mingfeng's heart skipped a beat. For example, that Qin Dandan and the previous Hong Yunfei can be considered to have been specially recruited by second elder Qin Tianhe. In the Valley of the Medicine Masters, as long as the higher-ups of the middle Khanate stage and above have the privilege of recruiting people from outside the Valley of the Medicine Masters, of course, after any of the higher-ups of the Valley of the Medicine Masters specially recruited people, they also have to be responsible for the people they have recruited. For example, that Hong Yunfei, after being specially recruited by second elder, became second elder's disciple. Huang Mingfeng thought for a while, and when he came back to his senses, he realized. The youth dressed in clothes whiter than snow had already walked a long distance, and was even not far from the training grounds in the distance. Immediately he hurriedly chased after him, shouting as he ran, "Brother Donghuang, wait for me." The training grounds in the middle of the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located occupied a vast area, and the terrain was relatively high. Surrounding it were 4 long stone steps that led to the 4 winding roads in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, leading directly to the mountain gate. Qin Dandan. Stepping onto the stone steps to the training grounds, Zhou Donghuang's calm gaze swept across the surroundings, and after a moment his gaze fell on a group of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters gathered together. Through the gaps in the crowd, with his current eyesight, he directly locked onto the young girl sparring with a youth in the crowd. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dressed in a long light green dress, the young girl with delicate and pretty features, with a steady pace, approached a youth who looked slightly younger than her. At first they were evenly matched, but gradually she gained the upper hand. Based on the current situation, it was only a matter of time before the young girl won. "Junior Sister Dandan, you're really amazing. She's indeed the daughter of second elder, she's already so powerful not long after returning to the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Like father, like daughter." The crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, seeing that the young girl had gained the upper hand, began to speak one after another, not stingy with their words of praise. Although Qin Dandan grew up in a small place, her martial arts talent is extraordinary. Not long after returning to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, she had a series of breakthroughs in her practice, and now she has attained level 4 of Qi gathering. Huang Mingfeng, who had caught up with Zhou Donghuang, saw that Zhou Donghuang's gaze had fallen on Qin Dandan in the crowd, and spoke at the right time. Of course, this is also because second elder has invested many rare herbs in her body. Bang! As Huang Mingfeng finished speaking, in the crowd, Qin Dandan's palm landed very forcefully on the youth's chest, knocking him back and causing his body to tremble as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Senior Sister Dandan, I concede defeat. It was just a spar, yet he was injured to such an extent. Although there was anger in the depths of the young man's eyes, he did not dare to show it on the surface because he was afraid of the second elder behind the young lady in front of him. He humbly cupped his hands and bowed his head. And now, Chin Dandan was like a proud peacock, glancing at the youth indifferently before looking away and walking away from the crowd. Junior Sister Dandan, wait for me. Two voices spoke at the same time, and two young men walked out from the crowd to keep up with Chin Dandan, like two inseparable followers. However, they very quickly realized that the young girl who had been striding out of the arena had suddenly stopped in her tracks. For a moment they subconsciously looked forward. Not far in front of them stood two youths. They had an impression of one of the youths, who was also a disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, named Huang Mingfeng. But this was the first time they had seen the other handsome youth dressed in clothes whiter than snow. Zhou Donghuang? The reason why Chin Dandan suddenly stopped in her tracks was because she saw someone she would never have dreamt of appearing here, the youth who had grown up with her, Zhou Donghuang. Why are you here? Chin Dandan's gaze turned cold as she questioned in a cold voice. End of this chapter. Chapter 145. As she questioned him coldly, Chin Dandan's gaze never left the person before her. Dressed in clothes whiter than snow, the handsome face in her memory had lost most of its previous childishness, and his features were sharp, making him look even more handsome and charming. In addition, the youth was already a head taller than her, and she had to look up at him. Most importantly, now that she was looking at the youth, she could faintly sense that the youth exuded a transcendent aura, causing her to involuntarily feel a sense of inferiority. Even the most outstanding disciples of the younger generation of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had not given her such a feeling. This kind of feeling also made Chin Dandan extremely annoyed. She, Chin Dandan, was the daughter of the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Chin Tianhe, and was the pride of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. This Zhou Donghuang was only a country bumpkin from the inferior prefecture of the western ridge of the Chu King in the country of Yunyang. What right did he have to make Chin Dandan feel so inferior? Who brought you to the Valley of the Medicine Masters? Without waiting for Zhou Donghuang to speak, Chin Dandan asked a second time. In her opinion, the reason why Zhou Donghuang could appear here was definitely because someone had brought him here, bypassing the people of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who were in contact with the country of Yunyang. It was impossible that he had come here through the people of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who were in contact with the country of Yunyang. This was because the person who was in contact with the country of Yunyang was her father, the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Chin Tianhe. However, faced with Chin Dandan's question, Zhou Donghuang did not respond to her, but said casually, Chin Dandan, it looks like you are doing well in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. You have already attained level 4 of Qi Gathering. As he said this, the corners of Zhou Donghuang's mouth turned up in a mocking smile. Chin Dandan attaining level 4 of Qi Gathering at this age was enough to cause a sensation in the country of Yunyang, but in his eyes, it was not even worth mentioning. Even his sister Yun Lu, who was only 11 this year, had already far surpassed Chin Dandan's level of martial practice. How about it? Are you interested in sparring with me? Zhou Donghuang asked with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Faced with the challenge of the youth before her, Chin Dandan's expression immediately darkened. Although she was now a level 4 adept, and her progress was much faster than before, she was still a level 4 adept. However, she knew that she was no match for the youth in front of her. Back when she was still in the Hong family of the Yunfeng prefecture capital, she had heard that this youth had killed the head elder of the Lin family, Lin Tianjing, who was also a preeminent family like the Hong family. And Lin Tianjing was a level 4 adept. 2 years had passed since then. In these 2 years, the young man's strength must have grown even stronger. Even if he hadn't become stronger, the youth's strength from 2 years ago wasn't something she could contend with. Zhou Donghuang, don't be so smug. Chin Dandan's gaze on Zhou Donghuang grew colder and colder. She said in a low voice, in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, there are many strong practitioners. There are many people who can defeat you. Chin Dandan's words were tantamount to admitting to the people around her that her strength was not as good as Zhou Donghuang's, and she did not dare to exchange blows with him. Looks like this brother Donghuang's strength is not bad, at least above level 5 of Qi Gathering. Huang Mingfeng, who was standing not far from Zhou Donghuang, could not help but guess in his heart when he saw Chin Dandan like this. Is that so? Zhou Donghuang glanced at Chin Dandan indifferently, his expression indifferent. This time, before Qindandan could respond to Zhou Donghuang, the two youths behind Qindandan had already taken 2 steps forward and stood on either side of Qindandan, glaring at Zhou Donghuang. "Lad, who exactly are you? How dare you be so presumptuous in front of Sister Dandan?" one of the youths asked in a low voice. "A debt collector." Zhou Donghuang did not even look at the youth's question, his gaze never leaving Qindandan. Now he grinned and spoke unhurriedly. "A debt collector?" The youth was taken aback. "Lad, you're also a disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters? I've never seen you before. Who specially recruited you?" The other youth asked with a serious expression. In the Valley of the Medicine Masters, those who had the authority to specially recruit were all senior figures of the middle Khanate stage and above. If the youth in front of them had been specially recruited, it meant that he had a senior figure of the middle Khanate stage of the Valley of the Medicine Masters behind him. "I'm not a disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters." Zhou Donghuang's tone was indifferent, but he still did not look at the other youth who had questioned him, his gaze never leaving Qindandan. "I'm also not interested in entering the Valley of the Medicine Masters." At this point, Zhou Donghuang paused and looked deeply at Qindandan. Some people may think that with the Valley of the Medicine Masters as a backer, they can fly up the branches and become phoenixes. However, in my eyes, the Valley of the Medicine Masters is nothing at all. To the extent that I, Zhou Donghuang, do not even deign to enter a small sect like the Valley of the Medicine Masters. As Zhou Donghuang's words fell, not only were Qindandan and the two youths stunned, even Huang Mingfeng, who had followed Zhou Donghuang here, and the group of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who had heard the commotion, were also stunned. This youth actually said that he did not deign to enter the Valley of the Medicine Masters? And said that the Valley of the Medicine Masters was a small sect? What arrogance! Qindandan laughed coldly, then looked sharply at the youth. "Zhou Donghuang, from what you're saying, you did not come to the Valley of the Medicine Masters because someone brought you here, but you came here on your own? This is the Valley of the Medicine Masters. I come and go as I please. Why would I need someone to bring me here?" Zhou Donghuang said lightly. "Zhou Donghuang." Almost as soon as Zhou Donghuang finished speaking, Qindandan glared at Zhou Donghuang and shouted sternly, "How dare you trespass into the Valley of the Medicine Masters?" "Trespass into the Valley of the Medicine Masters?" Hearing Qindandan's words, the group of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who had gathered around were in an uproar, and their gazes towards the youth who was confronting Qindandan became somewhat unfriendly. "Young fellow, you're really capable to be able to avoid the observation of the observation tower elders and trespass into the Valley of the Medicine Masters." One of the youths beside Qindandan stepped forward, looking coldly at Zhou Donghuang. According to the rules of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, trespassers of the Valley of the Medicine Masters will either have their practice crippled or be sentenced to death. On account of your youth and ignorance, I'll cripple your practice, then you can crawl out of the Valley of the Medicine Masters yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, the youth's arms shook without warning, and his legs moved as well. His entire body seemed to transform into a cheetah in an instant, rushing towards Zhou Donghuang. Humph! Almost as soon as the youth rushed out, Zhou Donghuang let out a cold snort. The cold snort, in the ears of the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, did not sound like much, but when it pierced the ears of the youth who was rushing towards Zhou Donghuang, it caused his expression to change dramatically, and his body shook violently as his feet stopped abruptly. Whoosh! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the youth who had just started sprinting towards Zhou Donghuang fell head first to the ground in the middle of his charge, and his body scraped against the ground as he fell unconscious. Dazzling blood flowed down from his ears, neither too fast nor too slow, just like a stream in a small stream. This is an acoustic attack technique. Among the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, there was no lack of experienced and knowledgeable people, and seeing the youth injured to such a state in the blink of an eye, their expressions changed drastically, and their gazes towards the youth in white standing with his hands clasped behind his back were filled with fear. Just now, in the instant that the youth had moved, Zhou Donghuang had used an acoustic attack technique called Lion's Roar that he had obtained on Earth in his previous life. Although Lion's Roar was only a second-grade technique, with Zhou Donghuang's current level of practice, he could easily kill a weaker chi-gathering adept with a wave of his hand. Just now, if he had not used all his strength to use Lion's Roar, the youth would definitely have died. The youth was only a level 6 adept of chi-gathering. How is this possible? The scene before her caused Qindandan to turn pale. She would never have dreamed that a level 6 adept of Qi gathering would be injured and knocked unconscious by Zhou Donghuang's cold snort before he could even get close to him. An acoustic attack technique? Since when has an acoustic attack technique become so strong? Kuhui is, after all, a level 6 adept, but he was knocked unconscious just like that. Even if the acoustic attack technique he used was a second-grade technique, to knock a level 6 adept unconscious, even if the latter was unprepared, he would have to be at least a level 8 adept. Him? A level 8 adept? He looks to be at most 17 or 18 years old, a 17 or 18-year-old level 8 adept of Qi gathering. Are you kidding? As the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters discussed animatedly, they looked at the youth again as if they had seen a monster, their eyes filled with disbelief. Level 8 of Qi gathering? Qin Dandan's expression changed, and the youth beside her broke out in cold sweat, glad that he had not been the first to step forward. Otherwise, the one lying on the ground now would not be Kuhui but him. His level of practice was about the same as Kuhui's. Go and get elderly. Qin Dandan took a deep breath and suppressed her agitated emotions with much difficulty. She whispered to the youth beside her, "Tell elderly that someone has trespassed into the Valley of the Medicine Masters." The elderly that Qin Dandan spoke of was the elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who was in charge of maintaining order in the arena. He was a Khanate stage adept, and his residence was near the arena. Usually he would occasionally patrol the arena, but most of the time he would practice in his residence. All right. The youth acknowledged and left in a hurry. After the youth left, Qin Dandan looked at Zhou Donghuang again with a tinge of fear, but her gaze and expression were as cold as ever. Zhou Donghuang, I did not expect you to have already attained level 8 of Qi gathering. Unfortunately, even if you have attained level 8 of Qi gathering, you are destined to die here today. End of this chapter. Chapter 146. Now, although Qin Dandan looked fierce on the surface, she was actually just putting on a brave front. After all, the youth before her was already a level 8 adept, and if he attacked her before elderly arrived, she would not be able to defend herself. No wonder you are the daughter of the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, deciding life and death so easily. Zhou Donghuang laughed coldly and took a step forward, walking towards Qin Dandan. His speed was not considered fast, but every step he took felt like he was stepping on Qin Dandan's chest, causing her expression to change again and again. What are you doing? Qin Dandan's expression changed, and she looked at Zhou Donghuang with fear. I just said, I am here to collect a debt. In a moment, Zhou Donghuang was already in front of Qin Dandan, smiling brightly, revealing 2 rows of teeth. When Qin Dandan saw this brilliant smile, she was so frightened that her body trembled. As someone who had grown up with the youth before her, she naturally knew that this smile of the youth before her was not a sign of happiness, but a sign of extreme anger. Almost as soon as Zhou Donghuang finished speaking, Qin Dandan's expression changed again, and Zhou Donghuang casually waved his hand, striking a palm at Qin Dandan's chest. No. Qin Dandan's expression changed, but with her level of practice she was completely unable to dodge Zhou Donghuang's palm. Stop. A few of the stronger disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, who were above level 8 of Qi gathering, had originally intended to stop the youth who had attacked Qin Dandan, but when they saw the foot of green light suddenly erupt from the youth's palm, their throats seemed to be violently strangled, and the words that they had just opened their mouths were cut off abruptly. Of the 2 words stop, he only said the word, stop. Bang. Zhou Donghuang's palm landed on Qin Dandan's chest, and the green light in his hand dissipated, and Qin Dandan was knocked back 2 steps. Her face alternated between green and red, and a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. A Khanate stage adept. Just now that was the release of Qi. Now, the attention of the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was not on the injured Qin Dandan, but on the young man dressed in a robe whiter than snow. Just now, when the young man struck out with his palm, the green radiance on his palm was a foot long. And this was the sign of the early Xiantian stage. This youth, who looked to be about 17 or 18 years old, was actually an early Khanate stage adept? Is he really a Khanate cultivator? A Xiantian cultivator's palm strike only made junior sister Qin Dandan retreat 2 steps? Even a level 8 adept would not be able to make junior sister Dandan take only 2 steps back with a casual blow from a Khanate adept. He's obviously holding back. At the same time, some people began to wonder why Zhou Donghuang's palm had only caused Qin Dandan to retreat 2 steps, but they all felt that Zhou Donghuang had intentionally held back. You crippled my meridians? Although Qin Dandan was also shocked by Zhou Donghuang's ability to release his qi, when she subconsciously tried to activate the qi in her body, she found that it was scattered everywhere and could not be gathered. At the same time, she felt an intense pain in her meridians. Coupled with the fact that Zhou Donghuang's palm had not hit her with much force, it was not difficult for her to guess that Zhou Donghuang had not intended to hurt her, but had only intended to cripple her meridians. Immediately, Qin Dandan's eyes revealed a look of despair. She knew very well what it meant to have one's meridians crippled. It meant that she would be a martial invalid for the rest of her life. She had thought that by becoming the daughter of the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, she would be able to become a phoenix. She had not expected that just as her level of practice was improving rapidly, and she had a chance of attaining the Khanate stage, that youth who had been her childhood sweetheart had come knocking on her door and directly crippled her meridians. Even in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, where there were many Khanate adepts, there was nothing that could be done to save her meridians. He crippled junior sister Qin Dandan's meridians? My God! He has completely offended the second elder behind junior sister Dandan. I was wondering why he had held back just now. It turns out that his palm was not intended to hurt junior sister Dandan, but mainly to cripple her practice. If I were junior sister Dandan given a choice, I would rather be bedridden for a few months than have my practice crippled. Faced with such a choice, wouldn't anyone choose to be bedridden for a few months? The surrounding crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters were shocked. They had never imagined that the youth before them would be so valiant as to cripple Qin Dandan's practice with one blow. It must be known that Qin Dandan was no ordinary person. She was the daughter of the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe. Moreover, because the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe, had no children, he doted on Qin Dandan, his long-lost daughter, to the core. This was also the reason why Qin Dandan had attained level 4 of Qi gathering not long after she had arrived in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The second elder had spent a lot of precious medicines on his daughter. From this, it could be seen how much he doted on his daughter. The most important thing was, the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was a middle Khanate stage adept. Even if the youth before them was an early Khanate stage adept, he would definitely not be a match for the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. When the disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Huang Mingfeng, once again looked at the youth in white with his back to him, his eyes narrowed and his face showed an indescribable shock. He had never imagined the youth before him was actually an early Khanate stage adept. Even more unexpected, the youth before him with one blow had crippled Qin Dandan's practice. This was practically an unforgivable affront to the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Zhou Donghuang, you deserve to die. When Qin Dandan looked at the youth again, her eyes were bloodshot, and she became even more like a shrew, pouncing on the youth with her claws and fangs bared. At this moment she had completely forgotten about the outburst of qi that the youth had just displayed. There was only one thought in her mind: revenge. Bang! This time Zhou Donghuang did not activate his qi. With a casual kick, he sent Qin Dandan flying 3 or 4 meters before landing on the ground. Even without using qi, Zhou Donghuang had an extreme muscular strength of more than 1,000 pounds, and dealing with the crippled Qin Dandan was a piece of cake. Wow! After Qin Dandan's body landed on the ground, her injuries were even more serious than before. After spitting out another mouthful of blood, she stared with bloodthirsty hatred at the youth in the spotless white robe and said through gritted teeth, Zhou Donghuang, you crippled my practice. My father will definitely not let you off. I will get my father to capture you, and I will cut you into 1,000 pieces with my own hands. Now Qin Dandan was completely blinded by hatred, and she screamed hysterically, as if she had completely forgotten that the situation before her was completely in the hands of the youth. Cut me into 1,000 pieces? Zhou Donghuang smiled, and then his expression suddenly turned cold. Do you believe that, before your father arrives, I can kill you? As soon as Zhou Donghuang said this, Qin Dandan shuddered in fear, and her expression changed drastically. Only then did she realize that the youth now had the absolute advantage, and could even kill her before her father arrived. Elder Li is here. And just then, there was a commotion in the crowd of onlookers, and a group of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters parted to make a path. An old man in a light green robe walked in, escorted by the young man who had originally been by Qin Dandan's side as her protector. Elder Li. Seeing the old man, the ferocious Qin Dandan's eyes lit up, and she hurriedly said to the old man, "This Zhou Donghuang not only trespassed into the Valley of the Medicine Masters, but he also injured Kuhui and crippled my meridians." "What?" The expression of the old man, who had been calm and collected, changed drastically upon hearing Qindandan's words. He had already known about Kuhui's injury, but he had never imagined that during the time he had been here, this youth who had trespassed into the Valley of the Medicine Masters had actually crippled Qindandan's practice. Qindandan was no ordinary disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. She was the daughter of the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. "Elderly, he is an early Khanate stage adept. Hold him down, don't let him escape." As the old man's expression changed, Qindandan reminded him at the right time. Although she did not want to believe that the youth was a Khanate stage adept, when the youth had attacked just now, the chi that he had emitted from his palm showed that he had already entered the Khanate stage. Khanate stage? As Qindandan's words fell, both the old man who had just arrived and the young man who had escorted the old man back were shocked into a daze. They looked at the youth in front of them, their eyes full of disbelief. "Sister Dandan, you must be mistaken? He, a youth of at most 17 or 18 years old, is a Khanate stage adept?" The young man was the first to speak up. "When he attacked me just now, he emitted a chi of chi." Everyone present saw it clearly. Qindandan was not surprised by the young man's doubts, and as she glared hatefully at the youth, she spoke in a dark tone. "Sister Dandan is right. He is indeed a Khanate stage adept. When he attacked just now, he emitted a chi of chi. He is an early Khanate stage adept." When the group of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters all spoke up to confirm, without a single other voice, even if the old man and the young man did not believe it, they had no choice but to believe it. "Elderly, you are the same as him, an early Khanate stage adept. You may not be able to defeat him. You hold him down. Zhong Yuntao, go get my father here," Qindandan said to the old man and the young man. The young man acknowledged and left, and the old man also hurried forward a few steps, staring at the youth fiercely. Who are you? Why have you trespassed into the Valley of the Medicine Masters? And why did you injure Kuhui, a disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters? And why did you cripple Qindandan's practice?" End of this chapter. Chapter 147. The old man stared fiercely at the youth, and the moment he opened his mouth, he asked a series of questions. Of course, at the same time he questioned, his eyes involuntarily revealed a hint of fear. A young Khanate stage cultivator. In the history of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, such a person had never appeared before. Because of this, he was deeply afraid that the youth in front of him came from a powerful force that was above the Valley of the Medicine Masters, a force that the Valley of the Medicine Masters dared not offend. "Who am I?" Zhou Donghuang glanced at the old man casually, and then looked at the young girl who had just stood up with difficulty and was glaring at him with hatred. He said lightly, "She knows best who I am, why don't you just ask her?" "Chem?" Hearing this, the old man immediately looked at the young girl. "Miss Dandan, do you know who he is?" "Of course I do." Qindandan gritted her teeth. "He is from the country of Yunyang. Furthermore, he was born and raised in a small town in an inferior prefecture in the western ridge of the Chu King in the country of Yunyang. I watched him grow up. Elderly, don't worry, he has no status or background, and it was only luck that allowed him to have this level of martial practice at the age of 19. As Qindandan finished speaking in one breath, the group of people around her, including the old man, fell into a dead silence at the same time. Now, almost all the disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters in the arena had gathered around. Because of this, after they quietened down, the entire arena fell into a momentary silence. At this moment, even if a needle were to be thrown on the ground, the sound of the needle hitting the ground could be heard clearly. After a moment, a disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was the first to recover and gasped. "That can't be. Someone from such a small place reaching the Khanate stage at the age of 19? In the history of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, the youngest Khanate stage adept was more than 30 years old. Sister Dandan, there is no need to lie to us. I also believe Sister Dandan's words. But it is still hard to imagine how someone from such a small place could have this level of practice at such a young age. Someone from such a small place, reaching the Khanate stage at the age of 19? Unless he had some miraculous encounter. Even if it was a miraculous encounter left behind by an ultimate Khanate stage adept, it would be impossible for him to be like this? Unless it's a primal core adept. As the group of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters whispered amongst themselves, Their gazes quickly fell upon the young man once more, their eyes filled with passion and greed. Who would not want a treasure left behind by a primal core adept? Even adepts who had attained the ultimate Khanate stage would be interested in the treasures left behind by the primal core adepts, because it could affect whether they could successfully attain the primal core stage and become a primal core adept. Primal core adept? Chin Dandan was in a daze for a moment. When she looked at the youth again, her gaze was filled with intense jealousy and hatred. At this moment she completely understood. No wonder this martial invalid could suddenly cultivate and step into the Xiantian realm in just 2 years, becoming a cultivator of the Xiantian realm. It turned out that he had obtained the opportunity of becoming a primal core adept. Moreover, it must have been obtained not long before she left the Magnolia Guild in Qingshan town. No wonder he was able to defeat Hong Yu, the level 1 adept of the Sunset Guild, with a single punch. It turns out that he had already obtained the opportunity left behind by the primal core adept then. Now there was a trace of regret in Chin Dandan's heart. If she had known earlier, she would have left the Magnolia Guild later, and perhaps she would have been able to snatch the opportunity left behind by the primal core adept from the youth. If I had snatched the opportunity left behind by the primal core adept from him then, now, the one who would attain the Khanate stage would not be him, but me. At this thought, Chin Dandan looked at the youth again, her gaze filled with deep regret. She regretted that she had not snatched the opportunity left behind by the primal core adept from the youth before leaving the Magnolia Guild. The opportunity left behind by the primal core adept? Now, even the elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, an early Khanate adept, looked at the youth with a look of greed in his eyes. He was now more than 80 years old, and with his martial talent he had no hope of attaining the primal core stage. At most he could live for another 20 or 30 years. However, if he could obtain the opportunity left behind by the primal core adept, he would have a chance of attaining the primal core stage and becoming a primal core adept, increasing his lifespan to 300 years. At this moment he even wished that he could take the opportunity left behind by the primal core adept and make it his own. In a flash the old man had an idea. Although he is also an early Khanate stage adept, he may not be a match for me. Even if he can fight me to a draw, I can discuss with him privately while we are fighting, and escape the Valley of the Medicine Masters with him before Second Elder arrives. As long as he is willing to share the legacy left behind by the primal core adept with me. The old man knew very well that even if the legacy left behind by the primal core adept was obtained by the Valley of the Medicine Masters, given his status in the valley, he might not be able to obtain it. Just like the first-grade techniques of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, he was not qualified to practice them. The first-grade techniques of the Valley of the Medicine Masters could only be practiced by those at the middle Khanate stage and above. Whoosh! With a shake of his legs, the old man seemed to have transformed into a ghost, speeding towards the youth like a shadow. His hands opened and closed, and his right hand formed a fist and punched out. From the old man's body, qi emanated more than a foot, and it was obviously more profound than the qi that Zhou Donghuang emitted. It was obvious that his level of practice was higher than Zhou Donghuang's. However, faced with the menacing old man, Zhou Donghuang only looked at him calmly. The qi in his body did not move as if he had been scared silly. This Zhou Donghuang, why? Just as many of the disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters saw that the youth seemed to be in a daze, they were puzzled. Before they could finish their thoughts, they saw the old man appear in front of Zhou Donghuang, the qi in his fist exploding, and he punched towards the youth like a blue meteor streaking across the sky. Bang! Just as many people thought that Zhou Donghuang was about to be hit by the old man, accompanied by a loud bang, the qi under Zhou Donghuang's feet exploded by more than a foot, and with a shake of his legs, his whole body rose into the air, and in the blink of an eye he was 2 meters above the ground. At this moment, the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was completely dumbfounded. Under their gaze, Zhou Donghuang seemed to know how to fly in the air, directly leaping 2 meters into the air, his whole body as light as a bird. First-grade swiftness technique? After the old man's fist had missed, his pupils contracted rapidly, and he subconsciously exclaimed in shock. And as soon as he spoke, it was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, shocking the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. It's actually a first-grade swiftness technique? I was just thinking, what kind of miraculous technique is this? So it's a first-grade swiftness technique, no wonder. Although we in the Valley of the Medicine Masters have first-grade techniques, I don't think there are any swiftness techniques among them. Just as the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, including Chin Dandan, realized that Zhou Donghuang had demonstrated a first-grade swiftness technique. Zhou Donghuang, who had risen into the air by stepping on the cloud-scaling ladder, landed just behind the old man. In the instant that the old man quickly turned around, Zhou Donghuang had already calmly pushed out a palm. The vast qi, under the gaze of the crowd, was like waves stacking on top of one another, colliding with the fist that the old man had hurriedly thrown out. The two 1-foot-long streams of true qi collided with each other, and it was like a splash of bright fireworks. The next moment, "No!" accompanied by the old man's hurried scream, the waves of genuine qi that were like waves upon waves of the sea once again annihilated the genuine qi on his fist like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking rang out. It was the arm that the old man had used to punch that had been directly snapped by Zhou Donghuang's palm, and the old man's shrill scream rang out just in time. Boom! Amidst the scream, the old man's body flew backwards and landed heavily on the ground, fresh blood spurting from his mouth. Elder Li lost? This Zhou Donghuang's qi is obviously not as thick as Elder Li's, but he was able to defeat Elder Li with one palm. Could the palm technique that he demonstrated also be a first-grade technique? Isn't it obvious? Among martial arts of the same level, swiftness techniques are the most valuable. This Zhou Donghuang even has a first-grade swiftness technique that the Valley of the Medicine Masters does not have, so what's so strange about him having other first-grade techniques? Looks like this is a technique left behind by a primal core adept. The old man's defeat was beyond the expectations of everyone present. However, when everyone looked at Zhou Donghuang again, their gazes became even more intense, as if they were looking at a rare treasure. At the same time, swoosh! Accompanied by the rapid sound of something breaking through the air, the gazes of everyone in the arena all landed on the distant sky. There, they saw a huge flying demon speeding towards them at an extremely fast speed, and in the blink of an eye, it was in the sky above the arena. This flying beast was a giant green-gray rock. When it spread its wings, it had a wingspan of 10 meters. It was majestic and insufferably arrogant. And this giant rock was the other great consummation flying demon of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, the Green Cloud Rock. At the same time, it was also the mount of the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe. Father. At the same time, Qin Dandan raised her head to look at the figure on the back of the azure cloud rock that was circling at a low altitude, and her eyes reddened as she shouted loudly, "My daughter's cultivation has been crippled, you must avenge me. Go down." The middle-aged man standing on the back of the green cloud rock with his hands behind his back heard Qin Dandan's voice, and his already gloomy expression became even darker, as if it could drip water. Following his command, he kicked the back of the green cloud rock with both legs, and the green cloud rock immediately flapped its wings and slowly landed on the arena, kicking up a cloud of dust. End of this chapter. Chapter 148. After the green cloud rock landed on the arena, the middle-aged man standing with his hands clasped behind his back also leaped down, the 3-foot green glow beneath his feet supporting him as he landed steadily. 3 feet of qi was the hallmark of a middle Khanate stage adept. The middle-aged man was of medium build, and his face was as sharp as a knife. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. In addition, he had a hooked nose, and as he stood there, he stared at Zhou Donghuang from afar, giving Zhou Donghuang the feeling that he was being stared at by an eagle demon. Father. As soon as the middle-aged man landed, Qin Dandan went up to him, 2 streams of tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'm useless, I've let down your painstaking efforts all this time. From today onwards, I'm just a martial invalid and I won't be able to bring you glory." Qin Dandan rushed forward and threw herself into the middle-aged man's arms, hugging him tightly. As she wept bitterly, her body twitched violently. The middle-aged man was Qin Dandan's biological father, the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe. Qin Tianhe held a high position in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and was responsible for supervising and communicating with 7 of the 16 countries of the East Valley, including Yunyang. Now, as Qin Tianhe's gaze shifted from the youth to the girl in his arms, the sharpness in his eyes disappeared, replaced by a look of deep love. "Dandan, don't cry, let father take a look." As Qin Tianhe spoke, he examined the condition of Qin Dandan's body. When he confirmed that all the meridians in Qin Dandan's body had been destroyed, his expression darkened. At this moment he also confirmed. His daughter's cultivation had indeed been crippled by someone. Moreover, all the meridians in her body had been destroyed, and there was no possibility of recovery. Even a primal core adept would be powerless. In that instant, Qin Tianhe's gaze pierced through the path that the crowd had parted to land on the youth, and it was filled with cold murderous intent. "You're the useless Zhou Donghuang that my daughter mentioned to me before?" Qin Tianhe said coldly. "You dared to destroy my daughter's practice. Today, if you don't give me an explanation, you can stay in the Valley of the Medicine Masters forever." As he spoke, the cold murderous intent in Qin Tianhe's eyes intensified. Although Qin Tianhe was still a distance away from Zhou Donghuang. However, the entire martial arts practice field was completely silent. Although his voice wasn't loud, it still clearly spread throughout the entire martial arts practice field. Explanation? Faced with Qin Tianhe's murderous glare, Zhou Donghuang's expression was indifferent, and his tone was extremely calm. "Who do you think you are? Do I need to give you an explanation for my actions?" Arrogant. As the youth spoke, the same thought appeared in the minds of everyone present. They only felt that this youth was too arrogant. The person who had just arrived was not someone that Elderly from the Valley of the Medicine Masters could compare to. Elderly was only an early Khanate stage adept, and coupled with the fact that he had not practiced a first-grade technique, he had lost to the young man. And now, the person who had come was the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Not only was he a mid-Khanate stage adept, but he had also practiced the first-grade martial arts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Although the youth was strong, he was only an early Khanate stage adept, and was not a match for the second elder. Therefore, seeing the youth so arrogant in front of the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, when they looked at the youth again, their eyes were filled with pity. Good. Seeing that not only was Zhou Donghuang's words arrogant, but his gaze was also filled with disdain, Qin Tianhe was so angry that he was speechless. "This is the first time in my life that I, Qin Tianhe, have met someone as arrogant as you." When Qin Tianhe spoke again, his voice was even colder, as if the surrounding air had dropped several degrees, giving one the feeling that they had fallen into an ice cellar. "Dandan, father will avenge you right now." When Qin Tianhe's gaze returned to Qin Dandan, he suppressed his anger and spoke gently. However, his tone was slightly hoarse from suppressing his emotions. "Father." Qin Dandan raised her head. Her tear-stained face was covered in frost. "Capture him, destroy his cultivation, and then hand him over to me. I want to cut him into 1,000 pieces. If he cooperates and hands over the Primal Chaos Adept's treasure, I can let him die a quick death. If he doesn't cooperate, I will cut off every piece of flesh from his body, slice by slice, and feed it to the dogs in front of his eyes." Qin Dandan's tone was even colder than Qin Tianhe's, and once it spread, it was as if the entire arena had been plunged into a harsh winter. "Dandan, you are so thoughtful. If you had not mentioned it, I would have forgotten that he had obtained the Primal Chaos Adept's treasure." The disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who had gone to report to Qin Tianhe had mentioned that Zhou Donghuang had obtained the opportunity left behind by the Primal Core Adept. But when Qin Tianhe arrived and was completely enraged by Zhou Donghuang, he had completely forgotten about this matter. Now hearing Qin Dandan mention it, he remembered. Since this youth had obtained the Primal Chaos Adept's treasure, he naturally could not kill him directly. Even if he wanted to kill him, it would be after he handed over the treasure. Zhou Donghuang. At the same time, Qin Dandan left Qin Tianhe's embrace and looked at Zhou Donghuang with a cold gaze. She said coldly, "I remember, on the day I left the Magnolia Guild, you told me that you hoped I would not regret what I did then. Am I right?" Qin Dandan asked. "That's right." Zhou Donghuang replied indifferently. "Now that I think about it, you said that to me back then because you had already obtained the Primal Chaos Adept's treasure, right?" Qin Dandan asked again, and without waiting for Zhou Donghuang to speak, she continued, "If my support today was only that tiny preeminent Hong family, I might regret it. But now, I am the daughter of the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. And my father, the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe, can easily kill you. As for what you said back then, let me answer you again, I, Qin Dandan, will never regret it." As she spoke, Qin Dandan's lips curled into a cold smile, and the hatred and murderous intent in her eyes intensified. "Is that so?" After hearing Qin Dandan's words, Zhou Donghuang smiled lightly and looked at Qin Tianhe. "It looks like you have a lot of confidence in this father of yours." "Of course." Qin Dandan raised her head like a proud peacock. "My father is not only the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, but he is also a mid-Khanate stage adept. Don't think that just because you defeated Elderly that no one in the Valley of the Medicine Masters can deal with you. In the Valley of the Medicine Masters, although there are not many who can deal with you, there are still many. And my father is one of them." As Qin Dandan finished speaking, Qin Tianhe's feet had already begun to move as he walked towards the youth in the distance. 19 years old, early Khanate stage. If you had not obtained the Primal Chaos Adept's treasure, you would be considered an unparalleled genius among the martial arts geniuses. A Primal Chaos Adept's treasure left behind by a Primal Chaos Adept, and you, a person from the backwater of the country of Yunyang, have achieved so much. If it had been given to any disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, their achievements would definitely far surpass yours. For such a treasure to be given to you is really a waste of God's gift. If you know what's good for you, hand it over now. I can persuade my daughter to leave your corpse intact. As Qin Tianhe's indifferent words fell, he had already walked into the crowd and stood opposite the youth, glaring fiercely at him. Are you done? Zhou Donghuang raised his eyelids somewhat lazily and glanced at Qin Tianhe. With a shake of his right hand, a small metal ball rolled out from his sleeve. The small metal ball was in his hand, and Zhou Donghuang played with it casually as he looked at Qin Tianhe mockingly. Qin Tianhe, is it? Do you know that when your daughter Qin Dandan was 5 years old, she wandered the streets alone and had no one to rely on, almost starving to death? It was my mother who brought her home from the snowstorm and gave her food and clothes to wear. Do you know that when she was 9 years old, her chronic illness acted up? It was also my mother who braved the wind and rain to climb cliffs, narrowly escaping death, to gather herbs to treat her illness and save her life. Also, seeing that Zhou Donghuang was about to continue speaking, Qin Tianhe had already interrupted him coldly. Your mother helped my Dandan most likely because she knew that she was my daughter and wanted to curry favor with me, Qin Tianhe? Don't make your mother sound so noble, and don't use your mother's little contribution to slander Dandan as an ingrate, Qin Tianhe said coldly. Hearing Qin Tianhe's words, Zhou Donghuang was stunned for a moment, then quickly regained his composure and could not help but laugh. In the past I've only heard of the saying, like father like daughter. Today I, Zhou Donghuang, have learned something new. So, Qin Dandan's ingrate was all inherited from you. Zhou Donghuang's eyes flashed coldly. Cut the crap. Qin Tianhe laughed coldly, the coldness in his eyes rising. Since you have no intention of surrendering and handing over the opportunity left behind by the Primal Core Adept, I will personally capture you and hand you over to my daughter to deal with. Almost as soon as Qin Tianhe finished speaking, the qi all over his body exploded by more than 3 feet, and with a jolt of his body, it was as if he had transformed into a cannonball that emitted a blue glow, blasting towards Zhou Donghuang. The momentum was fierce, as if thousands of men and horses were charging forward. However, faced with the fierce momentum of Qin Tianhe, who had crossed half the distance in the blink of an eye, Zhou Donghuang only snorted coldly. In the next moment, on the right hand that held the small metal ball, a foot of qi raged. In an instant, the small metal ball, or more accurately, the sword sphere, with the injection of the foot of qi, transformed into a small metal sword that was surrounded by a cold light that could be seen with the naked eye. Swish. With a casual wave of Zhou Donghuang's right hand, the small metal sword sliced through the air, like a meteor that flashed across the night sky, whistling towards Qin Tianhe. End of this chapter. Chapter 149. Whoosh. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the middle-aged man who had been charging at the youth suddenly fell head first to the ground, his body scraping the ground for some distance before coming to a stop. The 3-foot green glow that had burst forth from his body was also extinguished, like a flame that had been extinguished. The scene that had happened to the disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who had stood up for Qin Dandan was repeated, but this time the shock was even greater, causing the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters to stare in shock and silence. It was only when the small metal sword whistled back from afar, turning back into a sword sphere and returning to Zhou Donghuang's hand that the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters came to their senses and inhaled sharply. Second Elder, is dead? Under the watchful eyes of the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, the middle-aged man who had mysteriously fallen head first to the ground lay motionless on the ground. Between his eyebrows, there was a hideous bloody hole from which fresh blood flowed like water. Evidently this was a fatal wound. Just now, I think I heard the sound of a sword whistling for a brief moment. I heard it too. Didn't you all notice that the small metal sphere in Zhou Donghuang's hand suddenly turned into a small dagger-like sword that he threw at Second Elder? In my opinion, Second Elder was killed by that small metal sword. If that's really the case, isn't that small metal sword too fast? I actually didn't see anything. Following a wave of whispers, one gaze after another shifted from the corpse of the Valley of the Medicine Master's second elder, Chen Tianhe, to the youth. The youth was dressed in clothes whiter than snow, his left hand behind his back, and his right hand toying with a small metal sphere. Just now, many people had noticed the small metal sphere in the youth's hand, but they had never imagined that this small metal sphere could turn into a sword and kill the Valley of the Medicine Master's second elder in one blow. The youth who had come with Zhou Donghuang, the disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Master's Huang Mingfeng, saw Zhou Donghuang kill the Valley of the Medicine Master's second elder Chen Tianhe, and subconsciously took a few steps back, as if deeply afraid that others would think that he was in cahoots with Zhou Donghuang. He's finished. So far, Zhou Donghuang had displayed extraordinary power, and had even killed the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. However, this second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was not the strongest person in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Not to mention the fact that the Valley of the Medicine Masters had several other mid-Khanate stage adepts. The Valley head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was a late Khanate stage adept and was widely recognized as the strongest in the surrounding regions of the 16 countries of the East Valley. Father? It was only when the gazes of the Valley of the Medicine Master's disciples and the Valley elder who had lost an arm all fell upon the sword sphere in the youth's hand that Qin Dandan recovered from her shock. Dad. When she realized that her father, Qin Tianhe, had been killed by the young man, Qin Dandan let out a wail of grief. She then threw herself beside Qin Tianhe's corpse, her eyes filled with despair. Qin Dandan actually had no feelings for her biological father who had suddenly appeared. If he had been a beggar, Qin Dandan would never have acknowledged him. It was precisely because he was the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters and had a high status in the surrounding regions of the 16 countries of the East Valley that Qin Dandan had so readily acknowledged him as her father and behaved obediently and filially. Now, Qin Dandan's grief and anguish was not because of Qin Tianhe's death, but because she had suddenly lost such a powerful backer. With Qin Tianhe's death, even if the Valley of the Medicine Masters allowed Qin Dandan to remain in the valley for Qin Tianhe's sake, her status in the Valley of the Medicine Masters would plummet. Qin Dandan could not accept this reality. After confirming that Qin Tianhe was really dead, Qin Dandan suddenly raised her head and glared fiercely at the youth standing not far away. She gritted her teeth and said hatefully, "Zhou Donghuang, you dared to kill my father, the Valley of the Medicine Masters will not let you off." It was almost as if she was setting off Qin Dandan's words. Bang. Accompanied by a loud bang, the elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, whose arm had been maimed by Zhou Donghuang, pulled out a small bamboo tube from his pocket with his right hand. Immediately, a signal flare shot into the air and exploded. This signal flare could only be used by the upper echelons of the Valley of the Medicine Masters of the Khanate stage and above, and no one had only one. This kind of signal flare could only be used when one's life was in danger. Although this elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was not in danger at the moment, seeing that the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had died, he could only use this method to inform the other Khanate stage adepts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Elderly has released the signal flare. Today this youth will not be able to escape even if he has wings. Once the signal flare is released, even if the Valley head hears or sees it, he will still rush over. At the same time that the group of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters were alarmed by the signal flare, all over the Valley of the Medicine Masters, whether they had heard the sound of the signal flare or seen the fireworks, were alarmed. Especially the upper echelons of the Valley of the Medicine Masters of the Khanate stage and above. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. From the 4 observation towers around the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located, 4 huge figures whizzed out, heading straight for the place where the signal flare had exploded. It's the training grounds. The 4 huge figures were 4 flying demons, and judging from their huge size and speed, they were all great consummation flying demons of the Qi gathering. On the backs of these 4 flying demons stood either a middle-aged man or an old man. Now all 4 of them had exceptionally sharp eyes, staring fixedly at the training grounds in the middle of the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located. At the same time, in various parts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, figures were rushing out, some riding demons, some walking quickly. These people, without exception, were all Khanate stage adepts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The signal flare just now had been released by the upper echelons of the Valley of the Medicine Masters of the Khanate stage and above, and it would be useless for anyone below the Khanate stage to go. Therefore now, the people of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who were rushing to the training grounds were all Khanate stage adepts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. In the training grounds, Qin Dandan stared hatefully at the youth, her cold gaze as sharp as a sword, as if she could not wait to cut the youth into 1,000 pieces. Zhou Donghuang, if you destroy me today, don't even think of living, Qin Dandan said coldly. Is that so? Hearing Qin Dandan's words, Zhou Donghuang smiled faintly, his expression non-committal. And when the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters saw this, they were puzzled. This youth, not only is he not running now, but he also looks so confident. Could it be that he has something up his sleeves, that he is not afraid of the Khanate stage adepts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters? In my opinion, he doesn't know the strength of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Does he really think that just because he used that hidden weapon to kill Second Elder, he is invincible in the Valley of the Medicine Masters? Naive. Just now, if not for his sneak attack and Second Elder's carelessness and lack of defense, he might not have succeeded. Naturally. He is only an early Khanate stage adept. And Second Elder is a late Khanate stage adept. Although many of the disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters were puzzled by the youth's apparent confidence, most of them felt that the youth did not know his own limits. Who released the signal flare? Accompanied by a swift sound that pierced through the air, an old but resonant voice came from behind a huge gray eagle. It was an old man dressed in gray. It's the thunder-feathered eagle. Elder Emo is here. Although Elder Emo is also an early Khanate stage adept, he is close to the middle Khanate stage, and his power is much stronger than Elder Li's. Many of the disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters immediately recognized the gray eagle and the old man on its back who had arrived at the arena first. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After the thunder-feathered eagle, another 3 huge flying beasts arrived, and on each of their backs stood a person. The elders on duty at the observation tower are all here. Now, the 4 elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who had arrived first were the ones on duty at the 4 observation posts in the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located. They were the first to discover the signal flare and had rushed over immediately. All 4 of them were early Khanate stage adepts, and none of them were weaker than Elder Li, whose arm had been crippled by the youth. Second Elder? However, before Elder Li had time to speak, the 4 elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters discovered Qin Tianhe's body at the same time, and their expressions changed instantly. Qin Tianhe was the 2nd elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, a middle Khanate stage adept. In terms of power, even if the 4 of them attacked together, they would still be no match for Qin Tianhe. Bang, 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 bang. After the 4 elders on duty at the observation post discovered Qin Tianhe's death, they did not hesitate and each released the only signal flare they had on them. Instantly, the entire Valley of the Medicine Masters was alarmed. The signal flare of the 5 Khanate stage adepts and above in the Valley of the Medicine Masters sounded one after another, exploding in the air above the valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located. Furthermore, they all sounded in the air above the arena. My goodness, what's going on? 5 Khanate stage adepts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters are in danger at the arena? This signal flare seems to only be released when their lives are in danger, right? Let's go. Let's go take a look. Such a big commotion, even the head elder, the 2 guardians, and the valley chief must have been alarmed. 5 signal flare exploded in the air one after another, and at the same time as the brilliant fireworks blossomed, the entire Valley of the Medicine Masters became lively. At this moment, even the adepts below the Khanate stage in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, driven by their curiosity, all headed in the direction of the arena. Of course, they were just there to join in the fun. What a joke. If even 5 Khanate stage adepts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had to send out a signal flare for help, how could they help solve such a problem? End of this chapter. Chapter 150. The Valley of the Medicine Masters. The Training Grounds. Since the establishment of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, the training grounds had never been as crowded as it was today. All the people of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, whether they were elders or disciples, were all gathered there. There were even a few elders and disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters riding on flying beasts that came from all directions, circling around the outer perimeter of the arena. It was not that they did not want to go in. It was because there were a few great consummation flying demons on the training grounds, and their flying demons were of a lower level of practice and did not dare to approach due to the power of those flying demons. Why don't we go down and go up to the training grounds ourselves? A disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters suggested on one of the flying demons. I'm not going. If you want to go, you go. Can't you see there are so many people on the training grounds? If you go up, I'm afraid you won't even be able to squeeze in. The Medicine King Valley disciple on the other flying beast shook his head. I think so too. Let's just watch from afar. From here at least we can see what's going on inside. If we go down to the training grounds, I'm afraid we'll only be able to see heads. That person in white, I heard he's a 19-year-old young man. That one? I can't see his face clearly, but since they say he's 19, he must really be 19. I heard he was originally from a small place in the country of Yunyang, but because he obtained a treasure left behind by a primal core adept, he entered the early Khanate stage at this age, and he even used a very strange hidden weapon to kill the second elder of the middle Khanate stage. A 19-year-old Khanate stage adept, what a pity. Today he will definitely die. The gathered people of the Valley of the Medicine Masters all felt that the young man in white who had killed their second elder, Qin Tianhe, on the training grounds would definitely die today. On the training grounds, the young man in white stood there, his left hand behind his back and his right hand playing with a small metal ball. Around him, there was already a group of old and middle-aged men, all of whom were elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who had entered the Khanate stage, staring at him fiercely. However, although the group surrounded the young man, no one made a move, quietly waiting for something. In the circle formed by the elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, besides the young man, there was also a young girl. The young girl was lying beside a corpse, glaring at the young man with bloodthirsty hatred. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of something tearing through the air came from high up in the sky, attracting the attention of many people. It's the Great Elder. The Great Elder is here. Accompanied by a burst of exclamations, a huge blue-feathered eagle glided over the martial arts field at a low altitude, and then a light figure jumped down from the eagle's back. The 3 feet of green light wreaked havoc as the newcomer landed steadily on the ground, right in the middle of the circle of elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. He then revealed himself in full view of the crowd. It was a middle-aged woman dressed in a light gray robe. Although she had a head full of white hair, she looked like a middle-aged woman. With white hair and a youthful face, nothing could surpass this. Great Elder. Great Elder. As soon as the white-haired woman appeared, the elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, who had formed a circle around her, bowed to her respectfully. This woman was the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Yu Mei-chin. Yu Mei-chin was now nearly 90 years old. In terms of seniority, even the head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Su Amo, had to address her as uncle. Great Elder. Seeing Yu Mei-chin appear, Qin Dandan immediately rushed forward and knelt on the ground, weeping bitterly. My father has made countless contributions to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and now he has been killed by someone who trespassed into the Valley of the Medicine Masters. You and the Valley of the Medicine Masters must avenge my father. Rise. Yu Mei-chin stepped forward and bowed to Qin Dandan, her old voice full of energy. No matter who it is, the Valley of the Medicine Masters will not let him off for killing the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. As soon as she finished speaking, Yu Mei-chin's gaze fell on the youth not far away, and her originally cloudy eyes suddenly shone with a bright light. Of course, there was also a hint of fear in the depths of her eyes. After all, the person who had been killed, Qin Tianhe, was the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and a mid-Khanate stage adept like her. Although he was not as strong as she was, he was not far off. On the way here, she had met the elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who had come to look for her, and she had already completely understood the ins and outs of the matter. The youth before her was only 16 years old, and he had come from a small place in the country of Yunyang. It was suspected that he had obtained an opportunity left behind by a primal core adept, and that was how he had reached the early Khanate stage. That small metal ball can transform into a sword? After a moment, Yu Mei-chin's gaze fell on the small metal ball that the youth was playing with in his right hand. Could it be a sword sphere? As someone who was even more senior than Valley Lord Su Amo in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Yu Mei-chin, as the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, was no less knowledgeable than even Valley Lord Su Amo. If it really is a sword sphere, in the entire Valley of the Medicine Masters, I'm afraid only the Valley Lord alone can defeat him. Thinking back to the records of a sword sphere that she had read in an ancient book, Yu Mei-chin's eyes revealed a strong sense of fear. This was not the hidden weapon that the elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had mentioned at all, but a sword sphere that only adepts of the primal core stage and above could produce. In the hands of an early Khanate stage adept, A sword sphere could easily kill a middle Khanate stage adept, and even a late Khanate stage adept would be hard-pressed to survive if he was not prepared. Little fellow. Yu Meiqin looked at Zhou Donghuang and said in a low voice, to be able to obtain an opportunity left behind by a primal core adept is your good fortune. However, you have trespassed into the Valley of the Medicine Masters and killed our second elder, Chen Tianhe. Isn't that a little too much? Too much? Zhou Donghuang smiled indifferently, and then his gaze fell on the young girl beside Yu Meiqin. I have come here today only for Qin Dandan. Some people want to stand up for her and attack me. Do you think I should just let myself be slaughtered? What a joke. At this point, the corner of Zhou Donghuang's mouth turned up in a mocking smile. She has already successfully sent her father on his way. I advise you at your age, it's best not to meddle in other people's business, lest you follow in her father's footsteps. As he said this, Zhou Donghuang's eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. Faced with Zhou Donghuang's threat, Yu Meiqin's expression immediately darkened. Being threatened by a youth who was younger than her great-grandson made her extremely embarrassed and angry. If not for her fear of the sword sphere in the youth's hand, she would have attacked long ago. Zhou Donghuang. You, how dare you threaten the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters? Are you tired of living? Just now, before Yu Meiqin had appeared, Qin Dandan had not dared to provoke the youth too much, deeply afraid that he would kill her. Now that Yu Meiqin was here, Qin Dandan seemed to have more confidence. The head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters? Zhou Donghuang shook his head and smiled indifferently. Not just the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Today, even if the Valley Lord of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was here, he would have to kneel before me. How dare you? How dare you? Almost as soon as Zhou Donghuang's words fell, not only Yu Meiqin, the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, was aghast, but even the group of elders surrounding Zhou Donghuang were aghast, and began to shout angrily. The Valley Lord of the Valley of the Medicine Masters was the most respected person in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. In the Valley of the Medicine Masters, his position was no different from that of an emperor, high above and inviolable. And now, the youth before them had actually dared to insult the Valley Lord of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. How could they tolerate this? Such arrogance. What an insolent youth. Just as Yu Meiqin and the other elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters were enraged, two elderly voices sounded from the sky, and then a huge flying beast flew past at a low altitude, stirring up gusts of wind. Whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, two figures jumped down from the back of the flying demonic beasts. Two dazzling 3-feet-long streaks of azure light whistled out from under their feet in a timely manner, supporting the two of them to land steadily on the ground. The two of them landed not far from Yu Meiqin. Greetings, left guardian, right guardian. Greetings, left guardian. As the two of them appeared, the group of elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters withdrew their angry gazes from the youth and bowed respectfully to the newcomers. Meiqin, greetings, senior brothers. At this moment, even Yu Meiqin, the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, bowed to the two of them. The two people who had just arrived were two silver-haired old men, one fat and one skinny. The fat man was the same as Yu Meiqin. He also had white hair and a youthful complexion. His chubby face was rosy and glowing. As for the thin one, his face was old, and one could tell at a glance that he was close to 100 years old. In fact, the two of them were only a few years apart in age, both in their 90s, and were the two oldest people in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. In terms of seniority, they were both uncles to the Valley Lord, Su Mo. The fat old man was the left guardian Wang Tao. The thin old man was the right guardian Yu Wei. Both of them were mid-Khanate stage adepts, infinitely close to the late Khanate stage, and could enter the late Khanate stage at any time or never in their lives. In the Valley of the Medicine Masters, their strength was second only to the Valley Lord, Su Mo, and they were even stronger than Head Elder Yu Meiqin. Even the left and right guardians are here? Head Elder, left and right guardians are here. Now, of all the mid-Khanate stage adepts in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, only the Valley Lord and Third Elder are not here, right? Third Elder has been away recently, and will definitely not be able to make it. Only the Valley Lord is left. Head Elder and the two guardians are here. Even if the Valley Lord is not here, that youth is destined to be captured. Outside, the crowd of disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, without exception, all felt that the youth was finished. Zhou Donghuang, these two are the guardians of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. You, how dare you humiliate the Valley Lord in front of Head Elder and the two guardians? I advise you to kneel and beg for mercy. Seeing that the two guardians of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had arrived, Qin Dandan's confidence seemed to increase, and she looked coldly at Zhou Donghuang, laughing coldly. Chapter 151. However, Zhou Donghuang ignored Qin Dandan's taunts and instead looked mockingly at the two old men who had just arrived. The two guardians of the Valley of the Medicine Masters were second only to the Valley Lord, Su Amo. As for head elder Yu Meiqin of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Zhou Donghuang did not look at her again because he had already noticed that Yu Meiqin had most likely recognized the sword sphere in his hand. This kid. Just as the two guardians of the Valley of the Medicine Masters sensed Zhou Donghuang's mocking gaze, their faces darkened and their eyes filled with murderous intent. They took a step forward as if ready to strike at any moment. Senior brothers. Yu Meiqin took 2 steps forward and walked up to the two old men. She lowered her voice and said to them, "The small metal ball in Zhou Donghuang's hand must be the legendary sword sphere that only adepts of the primal core stage and above can make." The two old men had not been contacted by the elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. They had heard the sound of the signal flare and had come over, so they did not know exactly what had happened. However, in the process of being brought over by the flying demon, they had heard many elders and disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters around the arena talk about how the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe, had been killed by the youth. Of course, what they had heard was that the youth had used a hidden weapon to ambush the defenseless Qin Tianhe, and that was how he had managed to kill him. Then they had flown into the air above the arena and heard the youth's humiliating and blasphemous words about the Valley Lord. It was also at that moment that the rage in their hearts burned. Now, seeing the youth looking at them with a mocking gaze, how could they tolerate it? Sword sphere. Hearing Yu Meiqin's reminder, their eyes narrowed and their expressions changed. As the two oldest people in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, they naturally knew what a sword sphere was. It was a legendary item, a treasure that only adepts of the primal core stage and above could make. An early Khanate adept with a sword sphere could easily kill a middle Khanate adept. Even a late Khanate adept, if unprepared, would most likely fall at the hands of an early Khanate adept who possessed a sword sphere and knew how to use it. He knows how to use a sword sphere. The fat old man Wang Tao, the left sentinel of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, asked in a low voice. Second elder died under the sword formed by his sword orb. What do you think? Yu Meiqin smiled bitterly. So, the hidden weapon they were talking about earlier was the sword sphere. What sneak attack? Why would an early Khanate adept who possesses a sword sphere and knows how to use it need a sneak attack to kill a middle Khanate adept? The skinny old man, right guardian Yu Wei of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, had an ugly expression on his face. At this moment, both of them had completely given up on the idea of fighting the young man. What a joke. Not only did this youth possess a sword pellet, but he also knew how to use it. Even if they went up against him, they were destined to die. Unless their cultivation had stepped into the late stage of the Xiantian realm, they might be able to defeat or even kill their opponents if they were careful and knew how to use the sword orb. What? You recognize this sword sphere? Seeing the two old men's gazes land on the sword sphere with fear, Zhou Donghuang took a deep look at them and pretended to be surprised as he asked. Looks like you have indeed obtained a treasure left behind by a primal core adept. Otherwise, you would not be able to possess a sword sphere that only adepts of the primal core stage and above can produce. Yu Meiqin said in a low voice. Zhou Donghuang had been misunderstood as having obtained a treasure left behind by a primal core adept, and this was not the first time he had heard Yu Meiqin's words. He did not even think of explaining. Of course, the person in front of him was not worthy of Zhou Donghuang's explanation. Sister Yu, why is the valley head not here yet? Left Protector Wang Tao asked Yu Meiqin. I'm not sure. Normally the valley head should be here by now. Yu Meiqin shook her head and then her eyes flashed as she said softly, I'll leave for a while to find the valley head. Brothers, please keep an eye on this Zhou Donghuang. If you don't have to, try not to fight with him. The sword sphere in his hand is too strange. As Yu Meiqin finished speaking, she saw Wang Tao and Yu Wei nod their heads, and then she took out a leaf from her pocket and blew on it. As the sound rang out, Yu Meiqin's flying beast mount once again flew through the air and brought Yu Meiqin away from the arena, heading straight for the residence of Su Amo, the valley head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. On the way, Yu Meiqin met an elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters riding a flying beast from the direction of Su Mo's residence. Elder Yuan, you went to find the valley head? Head elder. When Elder Yuan saw Yu Meiqin, he respectfully greeted her and bitterly smiled. I went to find the Valley Master, but he didn't respond. You should be fully immersed in cultivation. I thought that you and the two guardians should be able to solve the problem that the Valley of the Medicine Masters is currently facing, so I did not disturb the Valley Head. Hearing Elder Yuan's words, Yu Meiqin smiled bitterly. That person the two guardians and I are unable to deal with. As soon as she finished speaking, under the shocked gaze of Elder Yuan, Yu Meiqin rode on her flying beast and flew off into the distance. In the blink of an eye, she landed at the residence of Su Imo, the head of the Valley of Medicine Masters. That youth, who is he? After Yu Meiqin left, Elder Yuan's eyes were filled with disbelief. Even Head Elder and the two guardians are unable to deal with him? The arena. As Yu Meiqin left, there were initially only a few voices discussing the sword sphere that the youth had mentioned. This was because only a few elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had heard of the sword sphere. However, after a while, the meaning of the sword sphere spread throughout the entire arena, so that everyone in the Valley of the Medicine Masters knew what the sword sphere was. The sword sphere, a weapon refined by adepts of the primal core stage and above? If a Khanate stage adept knows how to use the sword sphere, he can use it to easily kill an opponent of a higher level? That is to say, this Zhou Donghuang with the sword sphere could easily kill Head Elder and the two guardians? No wonder the second elder of the middle Khanate stage was killed by him with one strike. It turns out that the sword sphere in his hand is a treasure left behind by a primal core adept. Its power is amazing. There was an uproar in the arena. At the same time, the group of elders and disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters present also realized that the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had most likely left to look for the Valley Lord. Based on the current situation, if the Valley Head did not appear, no one in the Valley of the Medicine Masters would be a match for this youth. Furthermore, if the Valley Head was careless and the youth used the sword sphere to launch a sneak attack, there was a high chance that the Valley Head would be killed. However, now that they all knew that the youth had the sword sphere, their Valley Head would definitely not be careless. At this thought, they all felt reassured. Sword sphere? At the same time, Qin Dandan also found out how her father, Qin Tianhe, had died, and at the same time, understood why Head Elder and the two guardians had not acted against Zhou Donghuang. It turned out that everything was because of the sword sphere in Zhou Donghuang's hand. Damn it. What did he do to obtain the opportunity left behind by a primal core adept and enter the Khanate stage in just 2 short years? And he even obtained a treasure like the sword sphere. At this moment, Qin Dandan's heart was filled with regret. Of course, it was not because she had betrayed her adoptive mother, Lin Lan, but because she had not stayed at the Magnolia Guild for a while longer and taken away the opportunity and sword sphere that Zhou Donghuang had obtained from the primal core adept before leaving. If I had obtained everything left behind by the primal core adept, Zhou Donghuang's current achievements would be my achievements. And I might even be able to go even higher and further than this good for nothing. Qin Dandan was filled with regret. However, this Zhou Donghuang is also an idiot. Now he knows that Head Elder has gone to find the Valley Head, but he still hasn't left. When the Valley Head arrives, I'll see how he leaves. Now, on one hand, Qin Dandan felt that the youth was stupid and did not know how to leave the valley before the Valley Head arrived, but on the other hand, she hoped that the youth would not leave and wait for the Valley Head to deal with him. The Valley Head is a late Khanate stage adept. Even if this Zhou Donghuang has the sword sphere and the Valley Head is prepared, he is still no match for the Valley Head. Even though Qin Dandan had yet to meet the Valley Head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, it did not affect her confidence in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, who had a high and lofty status. Zhou Donghuang, the Valley Head can still deal with you. You do not have the ability to make me, Qin Dandan, regret betraying that Lin Lan. Qin Dandan stared coldly at Zhou Donghuang. You ruined my life, killed my father. Today you have fallen at the hands of the Valley Head. In the future, I will definitely get my father's senior brothers to kill that Lin Lan, and kill everyone related to her. Only then can the hatred in my heart be appeased. Of course, Qin Dandan did not dare to say these words aloud. She only dared to swear in her heart, because she was also worried that Zhou Donghuang would kill her in a fit of rage. After all, no one present could deal with Zhou Donghuang. This Zhou Donghuang, he still hasn't left? Is he crazy? If I were him, knowing that the Valley Head is coming, I would have run as far as I could. He probably knows that he can't run, so he wants to stay and negotiate with the Valley Head. I also think that he should be waiting for the Valley Head to come and negotiate. Otherwise, even if he doesn't leave, there is no need for him to just stand there like a fool. He could totally use the sword sphere in his hand to kill as many people as he can before the valley head arrives. Shu, lower your voice. If he hears your warning and attacks us, you will regret it. Just as many of the disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters were whispering. The valley head is here. In the air outside the training grounds, an elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, who was standing on the back of a flying beast, looked at the middle-aged man on the back of a huge flying beast flying towards them from afar. His eyes lit up as he shouted with all his might. His voice was so loud that it even drowned out the whispers in the training grounds. Chapter 152. Whoosh! The huge flying demonic beast was like a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, it flew from the outside of the training field to the sky above the training field. At the same time it slowed down its speed and swooped down. This flying beast was no stranger to the people of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. It was the mount of the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Now, on the back of this flying beast, besides the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, there was another person standing in front of the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The white-haired, ruddy woman, who was the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Yu Mei-chin, was currently clustered around a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was dressed in a scholarly gray robe. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. His complexion was like jade, and he exuded the unique charm of a mature man. Seeing him, many of the female elders and disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters' eyes lit up. Greetings, Valley Master. No one knew who was the first to call out loudly. Following this announcement, the entire training grounds erupted into an uproar. All the elders and disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters bowed to the middle-aged man on the back of the flying beast. Greetings, Valley Master. Greetings, Valley Master. A series of respectful voices rang out in the martial arts arena, and as they spread out, they reverberated throughout the entire valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located, rising and falling with great momentum. Zhou Donghuang, the head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, is here. Today, even if you have the sword sphere left behind by that primal core adept, if you dare to resist, you will definitely die. Qin Dandan's eyes lit up when she saw the huge flying demonic beast and the elegant middle-aged man on top of it. She glanced coldly at the young man and said in a cold voice. However, you don't have to worry. Today, after you die in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, I will send my senior brothers to the country of Yunyang to send that slut Lin Lan to the afterlife to reunite with you. Seeing that the valley head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had arrived, Qin Dandan finally dared to say what she had not dared to say before. As she spoke, the corners of Qin Dandan's mouth curled up into a sinister smile. The killing intent in her eyes had reached its peak. From Qin Dandan's perspective, the outcome of the young man before him today was either to die on the spot or be captured by the Valley of the Medicine Masters and killed after the Primal Core Adept's treasure was taken from him. The Valley of the Medicine Masters could not allow such a huge threat to continue to exist. However, out of Qin Dandan's expectations. Originally, Qin Dandan had thought that Zhou Donghuang would fly into a rage out of humiliation upon hearing her words. Unexpectedly, not only did Zhou Donghuang not fly into a rage out of humiliation, he even laughed. Qin Dandan, do you know why I haven't attacked you yet? Zhou Donghuang smiled and asked. Qin Dandan frowned. It would have been better if the young man hadn't mentioned this. Now that he mentioned it, she was a little puzzled. Ever since the youth had killed her father, the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe, even though more and more people had arrived, and almost everyone in the Valley of the Medicine Masters had gathered, the youth had not made a move. Not only did he not attack the others, but he also did not attack her. It would have been better if he hadn't thought about this, but now that he thought about it, it didn't make sense. She asked herself if she was a young man and wanted to leave, she would have already started a massacre and escaped instead of staying where she was, doing nothing and waiting for death. Because, as Qin Dandan frowned, the corner of Zhou Donghuang's mouth turned up in a mocking smile. I am prepared to wait until you are at your most desperate, when you are regretting all that you have done in the past, to strike and kill you. Just as Qin Dandan's face darkened at his words, Zhou Donghuang looked at the approaching flying beast. Now you should see the valley head, Sumo, as your last hope? As he said this, the smile on Zhou Donghuang's face became even more radiant. Hearing Zhou Donghuang's words and seeing the radiant smile on his face, Qin Dandan's face turned pale, and an ominous feeling rose in her heart. This Zhou Donghuang? Could it be that he has some sort of relationship with the valley head? He, Could it be that the valley head brought him into the Valley of the Medicine Masters? It was no wonder that Qindandan thought so. After all, up until now the martial arts talent that Zhou Donghuang had displayed was too out of this world. A 19-year-old Khanate stage was already worthy of the Valley Head personally welcoming him into the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Not far from Qindandan, the two guardians of the Valley of the Medicine Masters heard the conversation between Zhou Donghuang and Qindandan, and they could not help but frown slightly. Their current thoughts were similar to Qindandan's. However, they were still dissatisfied with the fact that Zhou Donghuang had killed the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe. After all, he was a mid-Khanate stage adept of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Including Qin Tianhe, there were only 5 mid-Khanate stage adepts in the entire Valley of the Medicine Masters. And now, with Qin Tianhe dead, there were only 4 left. If he really was specially invited into the valley by the Valley Head, we must punish him severely according to the rules of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The fat old man, the left guardian Wang Tao, said in a low voice. Of course. The skinny old man, the right guardian Yu Wei, nodded in agreement. Whoosh, whoosh. As the huge flying beast flew across the sky, 2 figures leapt down, one in front and one behind, and landed in the encirclement of the elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. It was the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Yu Mei-chin, and the Valley Head, Su Mo Valley Head. Valley Head. The elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, who had formed a circle, all bowed respectfully to Su Mo Valley Head. Even the 2 guardians of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Wang Tao and Yu Wei, although they were Sumo's elders in public, their seniority was not higher than their status, and at this moment they also bowed respectfully to Su Mo. Under normal circumstances at this moment, Su Mo would definitely return the greeting to Wang Tao and Yu Wei. But now Su Mo stood there not looking at Wang Tao or Yu Wei. His gaze seemed to be completely attracted by the youth in white standing not far away. In this period of time, because of the amazing Khanate elixir, Sumo's level of practice had advanced rapidly, and he was getting closer and closer to the ultimate Khanate stage. Therefore, under normal circumstances, he had no intention of stopping his practice. Because of this, even when the elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters came looking for him, he did not stop his practice when he saw that they were not in a hurry to break in. Only when his uncle, the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Yu Mei-chin, came and broke in did he stop his practice. After learning of what had happened in the training grounds, he immediately guessed that the person who had done it must have been his master. The youth in white, the sword sphere, both were the hallmarks of his master. He did not even have time to explain to Yu Mei-chin before he flew onto the back of Yu Mei-chin's flying beast mount and came to the training grounds. Valley Head. Qindandan took 2 or 3 steps forward and knelt in front of Su Mo, weeping bitterly. My father, Qin Tianhe, was the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and had made countless contributions to the Valley of the Medicine Masters. But today he was killed by someone who trespassed into the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Please, Valley Head, give justice to my father. Although Qindandan was not confident, she had no other choice. Just as the youth had said, the head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters before her was the last straw that she could clutch at. However, Su Mo completely ignored Qindandan. He took 2 steps forward, past Qindandan, and under the shocked and incredulous gazes of the crowd from the Valley of the Medicine Masters, he knelt before the youth. Su Mo pays his respects to Master. In the blink of an eye, the loud, respectful voice once again spread throughout the entire training grounds, and even throughout the vast valley where the Valley of the Medicine Masters was located. The echoes caused everyone in the martial arts practice field to be stunned. The entire martial arts practice field immediately fell into a deathly silence. This was especially so for the elders of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, as well as the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Yu Mei-chin, and even the Valley of the Medicine Masters left sentinel Wang Tao and right sentinel Yu Wei. They all stared in disbelief at the figure kneeling on the ground with his back to them. If not for the fact that they were very familiar with the Valley Head, they might even have suspected that this was a fake Valley Head. Is that really the Valley Head? Valley Head calling that youth, Master? Are you sure you're not joking? He's really the Valley Head? The high and mighty Valley Head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters is calling a youth, Master? I'm not dreaming, am I? Now, the rest of the people of the Valley of the Medicine Masters in the training grounds were also completely dumbfounded. They could not believe what they were seeing and hearing was real. What a joke. The Valley Head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Su Mo, was the most powerful person in the surrounding regions of the 16 countries of the East Valley. And that youth was only from a small place in the country of Yunyang. How could he be the master of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Sumo? No. Impossible. Qin Dandan had just been scared silly by Sumo's words, and now that she had recovered, her face was full of disbelief. How is this possible? How is this possible? Qin Dandan stood up, her body shaking violently as she pointed a finger at Sumo's back. You're not the Valley Head. You're definitely not the Valley Head. Qin Dandan, how dare you? Seeing Qin Dandan like this, Yu Meiqin's expression changed and she scolded her coldly. Although she also could not understand why the Valley Head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters would call that youth, Master. The Valley Head of the Medicine Masters was not someone Qin Dandan, a disciple of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, could disrespect. Yu Meiqin's scolding caused the last shred of hope in Qin Dandan's heart to completely collapse. Her whole body slumped to the ground as if she had lost all her strength, and her face was as white as a sheet. Qin Dandan, everyone has to make complicated choices for themselves. I only hope that you will not regret it in the future. That day when she had left the Magnolia Guild, the youth's words still rang in her ears. At that time she had been dismissive of the youth's words. Especially after she had entered the Valley of the Medicine Masters and recognized the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe, as her father, she had felt that she and that youth were no longer of the same world. That youth was destined to be trampled underfoot by her. And now, the youth that she had always looked down on was standing there as proud as a mountain. And the Valley Head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Sumo, who she had always thought was superior to, was kneeling in front of the youth, respectfully calling him Master. Chapter 153. Although Sumo knew in his heart that kneeling in front of the young man in front of the entire Valley of the Medicine Masters would undermine his authority as Valley Head. But so what? Now, after tasting the sweetness of the Khanate elixir that the young man before him had formulated, he no longer wanted to take it, because, by taking the Khanate elixir that the young man had formulated, he had a high chance of attaining the Primal Core stage and becoming a Primal Core adept before he died of old age. Once he became a Primal Core adept, his life would be extended by nearly 200 years. In the face of that nearly 200 years of life, whatever authority, whatever face, was completely thrown to the back of Sumo's mind. Furthermore, so what if his authority had been damaged today? As long as he still had his strength, as long as he was the strongest in the valley, who in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, including his elders, would dare to disrespect him as Valley Head? To Sumo, pleasing the young man before him was the most important thing. Everything else was not important. Get up. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Zhou Donghuang glanced at Sumo, and at the same time that Sumo stood up, Zhou Donghuang walked out unhurriedly, arriving in front of Qin Dandan in the blink of an eye. Qin Dandan. Zhou Donghuang looked down at the young girl sitting paralyzed on the ground, her face as white as a sheet, and the smile on his face deepened. Now how do you feel? But now Qin Dandan did not seem to hear Zhou Donghuang's words, sitting there paralyzed, her face dejected. Do you regret it? Zhou Donghuang asked again. At this time, Qin Dandan's originally dull eyes finally had a glimmer of life, and she looked at Zhou Donghuang and laughed coldly. Zhou Donghuang, it was only because you were lucky enough to obtain the opportunity left behind by a Primal Core adept that you are where you are today. If not for that, you would have been destined to be stepped on by me, Qin Dandan, for the rest of your life. As she said this, Qin Dandan's eyes shone with a look of defiance and stubbornness. How dare you? Sumo, who had just stood up, heard Qin Dandan speak so shamelessly in front of his master, and he immediately flew into a rage. Qin Dandan, if you dare to be rude to my master again, I will have your life. Ha! Qin Dandan laughed, her face full of sarcasm. The head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, acknowledging a kid who is still wet behind the ears as his master. What a joke. You! Just as Sumo could no longer suppress his anger and was about to attack Qin Dandan, Zhou Donghuang stopped him with a look. Following that, Zhou Donghuang looked at Qin Dandan with a mocking smile. Qin Dandan, as long as you kneel down and kowtow, beg for mercy and say that you were wrong and regret it, I won't kill you. How about that? Qin Dandan couldn't help but be taken aback by the young man's words. She looked at the young man suspiciously and asked, Are you serious? You only have 3 breaths of time to consider. Zhou Donghuang said lightly. Almost as soon as the youth finished speaking, Dandan lifted her limp body and knelt before the youth. She lowered her head and said hoarsely, "Big brother Donghuang, I was wrong, I regret it. I should not have betrayed mother, should not have betrayed you, should not have betrayed the Magnolia Guild." At this moment, Dandan was regretting her decision. If she had not betrayed Lin Lan, Zhou Donghuang, and the Magnolia Guild, even if she could not take the opportunity left behind by the Primal Core Adept, Zhou Donghuang would not have been stingy given his character. If she had stayed by Zhou Donghuang's side, her achievements would not have been less than if she had acknowledged the second elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Qin Tianhe, as her father and entered the valley. However, now that she had been crippled by Zhou Donghuang, although she said that she regretted it, deep in her eyes, there was a deep hatred. After all, now, even if she begged for mercy and said she regretted it, the most she could do was keep her life. With her meridians crippled, she was destined to be an ordinary person for the rest of her life. Moreover, she knew the character of the youth before her. Even if he did not kill her, he would definitely not keep her by his side. You know when to yield and when to stand tall. Seeing Dandan so spineless, Zhou Donghuang laughed coldly, his eyes full of disdain. "Killing you with my own hands would really dirty my hands." As he said this, Zhou Donghuang looked at Suemo and said calmly, "I only told her that I would not kill her, but I did not say that others would not kill her. You understand what I mean?" As he said this, Zhou Donghuang looked deeply at Suemo and asked, "Master, Suemo understands." As Suemo responded, he looked at Dandan with a cold, murderous look. "Zhou Donghuang, you are shameless." When Dandan heard the youth's words, her expression changed completely. She raised her head and glared at the youth with red eyes. "You go back on your word, you go back on your word. You could so cruelly betray a woman who has treated you like her own daughter for almost 10 years. What difference is there between such behavior and that of a beast?" Zhou Donghuang glanced at Dandan, his eyes flashing coldly. "Towards people, of course I will not go back on my word. But towards beasts, especially ungrateful beasts like you, why should I keep my word?" Killing Dandan to vent the hatred in his heart was only a small part of the reason. The bigger reason was that Zhou Donghuang wanted to stand up for his mother, Lin Lan. "You." Dandan's blood rushed to her head, and as she opened her mouth before she could finish her sentence, she could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, Suemo snorted coldly and stepped forward like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, he was 2 meters away from Dandan, and with a point of his finger, a condensed green light shot out from his fingertip. 1 foot. 2 feet. Just as Sumo's light was about to extend to 7 feet, pierce through Dandan's chest and kill her, bang. In that moment of imminent peril, accompanied by a loud explosion, Sumo's body shook violently. Not only did the green light that had extended to 7 feet from his fingertip dissipate, but he also retreated several steps in a timely manner. As he retreated a few steps, Suemo opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as white as a sheet, and it was obvious that he had suffered a serious injury. "Who is it?" Zhou Donghuang's expression also changed in that instant, and he raised his head and looked sharply into the sky. The sword sphere in his right hand had transformed into a sword, and it shone with a cold light that was visible to the naked eye. Seeing that Suemo had attacked her, Dandan, who had thought that she was definitely going to die, was stunned when she realized that she was not dead. She then followed Zhou Donghuang's gaze and looked into the sky above her. There was an old man in a black robe standing there. He had a thin figure and an aged face. The old man's face was covered in wrinkles, and he looked even older than the Valley of the Medicine Master's right guardian, Yu Wei. But he stood in the air, his black robe fluttering in the wind. This move shocked everyone present. Primal Core Adept. Many disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters cried out involuntarily. Everyone knew that only when a martial adept entered the Primal Core stage could he rely on his inner yuan to ignore gravity and fly in the air. Furthermore, if one looked closely, one could see that there was a faint golden light surrounding the old man's body, supporting him as he floated in the air. Golden Essence Adept. Seeing the faint golden light surrounding the old man, Zhou Donghuang's eyes narrowed. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell at a glance that the old man in the black robe before him was a Golden Essence Adept. Golden Essence Adept was another name for adepts who had entered the ultimate Primal Core stage. The Primal Core stage, like the Khanate stage, was divided into 4 levels. They were the early Primal Core stage, the middle Primal Core stage, the late Primal Core stage, and the ultimate Primal Core stage. When a Khanate adept entered the primal core stage, the first step was to condense the false core. After successfully condensing the false core, one would be considered to have entered the early primal core stage. After the false core, the next step was to condense the true core, and once successfully condensed the true core stage, one would be considered to have entered the middle primal core stage. After the true core was the silver core, corresponding to the late primal core stage. Adepts who had entered this stage of practice were also called silver essence adepts. After the silver essence was the golden essence. For a primal core adept to fly in the air, he needed to rely on his inner yuan. The inner yuan of an early primal core adept came from the false core and was pale white. The inner yuan of a mid-primal core adept came from the true core and was milky white. The inner yuan of a late primal core adept came from the silver essence and was silver. The inner yuan of an ultimate primal core adept came from the golden essence and was gold. Because of this, Zhou Donghuang could tell that the old man in the black robe before him was a golden essence adept. Of course, when Buddhist adepts cultivated Buddhist essences, even if they had just entered the early primal core stage, their inner yuan would still be gold. However, within that gold inner yuan, there was a Buddhist Sanskrit imprint, and it was completely different from the gold inner yuan surrounding the old man in the black robe before him. The gold inner yuan surrounding the old man in the black robe before him was the inner yuan of a true golden essence adept. Thank you, Senior, for saving my life. After a moment of shock, Qin Dandan realized that it was the old man in the black robe who had saved her. She hurriedly turned to the old man and knelt down to thank him, her eyes filled with the joy of surviving a calamity. Of course, on her face, there was still some apprehension. This was because she did not recognize the old man in the black robe before her, and she was not sure if he would still save her after saving her just now. Sir. After Suemo had caught his breath, he gave a 90-degree bow to the old man in the black robe. His voice was almost trembling as he asked respectfully, "May I know why you have come to the Valley of the Medicine Masters?" Primal core adepts were above Khanate adepts. Even if it was just an early primal core adept, if he attacked with all his might, his inner yuan would be able to envelop an area of 100 meters around him, leaving nothing behind. When a mid-primal core adept used his full strength, his inner yuan could cover an area of 300 meters in radius, and one blow could destroy a small village. When a late primal core adept used his full strength, his inner yuan could cover an area of 1,000 meters in radius, and one blow could destroy a large village. When an ultimate primal core adept used his full strength, his inner yuan could cover an area of 3,000 meters in radius, and one blow could destroy a small village. And the old man in the gray robe before him was surrounded by the golden inner yuan unique to ultimate primal core adepts. He was obviously an ultimate primal core adept, and if he used his full strength he could easily destroy everything in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.